Chapter 214. When Qin Guang and Zhong Bai left the hospital together, they were still in a daze. He didn't expect that Wang Guxiong would stop him and say that the Wang family was indebted to him. It was not complicated. Because of the accident, Wang Qing finally came to his senses. He was afraid that his family would vent their anger on Qin Guang, so he asked his father to go back. Wang Qing had repeatedly emphasized to Wang Guxiong not to pursue the matter with Qin Guang and not to blame him. Furthermore, if it wasn't for this matter, Qin Guang would definitely die if he continued racing. Even without the racing god, Wang Qing believed that he would still try his best to break through his limits. This time it was a blessing in disguise. In fact, after the operation he became clear-headed and thought a lot. Although he was still reluctant to give up the excitement brought by that speed, he swore that he would never race again. When the car fell off the cliff, he had used a technique that he learned from Qin Guang to narrowly avoid a tree that was flying in his direction. That was how he managed to survive. Therefore, the racing god didn't hurt him, but helped him and saved his life. Later, when Wang Qing heard that Qin Guang was also outside, he forced himself to cheer up and called Qin Guang in. He apologized again. Qin Guang was also ashamed, so he told everyone about his decision not to teach people to race in the future. As for what Wang Qing said before he left, he only regretted that he couldn't go to Hong Kong to compete with the world's top racers, but Qin Guang didn't care about it at all. In fact, Qin Guang made up his mind not only to stop teaching people to race, but also to stop racing himself. He knew how attractive his skills were, but few people who loved racing could resist the temptation of his godly skills. It was like a drug. People knew that they were like moths to the fire, but they could still be intoxicated. In the end, Qin Guang didn't have the heart of a street racer. Zhong Bai sent him directly back to school. Before leaving, Zhong Bai thought for a moment and said, "Brother Qin Guang, remember what Uncle Wang said to you earlier?" Qin Guang closed the door, turned to the driver's seat and asked, "What is it?" Zhong Bai looked at him speechlessly. "You've already forgotten. Uncle Wang said that he owes you a great favor. In the future, if you encounter any difficulties in Wujing City that you can't solve, you can look for him. He will help you once. Those of the older generation aren't like us brats. Our words carry enormous weight, and the weight of our words and actions are completely different." Qin Guang was amused. "Really? Is this sentence as powerful as a death exemption medallion?" Zhong Bai rolled his eyes. "It's not exactly a death exemption card, but it's not far from it. There are some things that we can't help with, but for people of Uncle Wang's generation, it may only take a few words. Let me remind you, this kind of big favor, you have to find the right opportunity to use it. Sai, this incident had a great impact on us. Maybe I should learn from Brother Shao Kai and do something." Qin Guang grinned. "If you want to get rich, remember to take your brother with you." "Of course." Zhong Bai smiled. "Then hurry up and go. I'm going back to school. I'm busy revising for the exam." "Poor great monk." Zhong Bai joked again and left. When Qin Guang returned to the dormitory, it was already past 10 p.m. Unlike before, there were no shouts of games coming from the dormitory. Instead, there was the sound of books being flipped and the rustling of writing on paper. University life was like this. Qin Guang wasn't sure about other schools, but at least from what he saw in Gokyo University, especially the male students in his major, they spent most of the semester fooling around. It was only when it was nearing the end of the semester that everyone calmed down and clenched their teeth to cram for the Buddha's feet. It had to be said that most of the people who were able to fight their way out of the tight encirclement and enter Wujing University had their own way of thinking when it came to learning. Although they were usually not serious, their level of sharpening a spear at the last minute was very high. After cramming for a few years, they were able to handle the final exams safely. It was the same for Qin Guang. When it came to critical moments, he was able to concentrate on reading, except for English. The others only raised their heads slightly and asked him what he was doing today. Qin Guang casually explained that he went to the hospital to help out with some matters. He did not say anything else and flipped open his book. He had wasted the entire day again. He had to hurry up. In another 3 to 4 days, it would be the legendary stressful physical chemistry course. Anyone who had taken this course would know how scary it was. As for those who had not taken this course, they only needed to ask around about the terrifying 40% failure rate and they would immediately understand. As the saying went, the tree of advanced mathematics was covered with corpses. In fact, these people were ignorant. Compared to physical chemistry, advanced mathematics was like a cute baby, while physical chemistry was like Godzilla, a scourge. When the lights went out at 12 o'clock sharp, Qin Guang's mind was still in a daze. He had only read for 2 hours. The four of them laid on the bed and stopped talking about the game. Instead, they focused on physics and chemistry for a bedtime discussion. It was a heated discussion. It was as if they had returned to the time when China was newly established and the whole country was researching nuclear bombs. They waited until 2 o'clock in the morning before the group of students finally fell asleep. At that moment, Qin Guang was lying on the bed. In his mind, he had made a vow during the day. Yes, he could not race anymore. However, life was just so laughable. Fate played tricks on people like this. The vow that the genius had made a moment ago was ruthlessly smashed in the face of cruel reality, instantly shattering into pieces. Qin Guang's vow seemed so solemn when he made it, but in the face of fate, it was so fragile. There was only one thing that completely changed his mind. The next morning, he suddenly received a call from Tang Ying asking him to go to the hospital immediately. Tang Ying had something important to tell him about the kidney transplant. However, he could not explain it clearly over the phone. He had to talk to her face to face. At that time, Qin Guang had a vague feeling that something was wrong. When he arrived at the hospital, Tang Ying carefully told him the whole story. At first he was furious. He flew into a rage and wanted to tear down the hospital. Then he felt extremely helpless. He could only sit down dejectedly and wave his hand in pain. His face was full of indifference. The kidney was going to be taken away. The donor, who was supposed to leave today, suddenly changed his mind and postponed the matter indefinitely. At that time, Tang Ying panicked and used many connections to finally find out what was going on. A patient with a lot of spare cash suddenly appeared out of nowhere. He directly negotiated a 3 million reward with the donor and his family, hoping that the donor would donate the kidney to him first. Indeed, his condition was not as serious as Feng Rong's, and the kidney was not as compatible as Feng Rong's, but he had money. Tang Ying and Qin Guili had promised the donor 500,000 according to the usual practice. The donor did not raise any objections, but he refused to sign the agreement. Finally, he changed his mind before the 3 million was thrown at him. Everyone came to a sudden realization. No wonder he had been hanging around and refused to move. There was actually such a reason. Chapter 215. However, Qin Guang still couldn't restrain his anger. His anger was simple. They had agreed on a deal and were only one step away, but she suddenly changed her mind. How could she? This wasn't a simple promise. This was his mother's life. However, he was equally helpless. Although the donor's change of heart was shameful and hateful, she knew that he was going to die and was willing to use his life to exchange for a better life for his family. There was no suspense or difficulty in choosing between 3 million and 500,000. Although the patient's condition wasn't that serious and the compatibility wasn't that good to the donor, it wasn't something she needed to care about. She wouldn't be able to live anyway. All she needed to do was consider giving up her life to get the last bit of wealth for her family. Qin Guang, don't be sad, there's still a chance. Tang Ying looked at Qin Guang's ashen face and didn't know how to comfort him. Qin Guang's mind was in a mess. After a long time, he stood up abruptly and asked, 3 million? Is that all that the donor can afford? Tang Ying nodded. I've asked someone I know. That family really worked hard. They sold everything and borrowed whatever they could. After all, with that illness, everyone knows that the last resort is to get a kidney transplant, so they gave it their all. Qin Guang slammed the table fiercely. Isn't this nonsense? With their compatibility, even if the transplant is successful, there's a high chance that it won't be compatible. In the end, the transplanted kidney won't be able to function at all. It's a pure waste. Tang Ying sighed again. You're thinking from your own point of view, but for someone else, even if there's only a 50% chance of success, they're still willing to give it their all. Qin Guang fell silent. He really wasn't in the position to blame others for this kind of thing. He couldn't blame the donor for changing her mind. There was no choice between 3 million and 500,000. He also couldn't blame her for intervening. No one wanted to die. If he had to blame someone, he could only blame fate for messing with him. If it wasn't for the fact that so many things had happened to his family in the past year, he and his father would have been able to fork out 3 million. Does my dad already know about this? Qin Guang asked. Tang Ying shook her head. I haven't told him yet. I just found out about the situation this morning, so I rushed to tell you. Qin Guang stood up. Well, that's good too. Don't tell my dad about it for now. I'll think of something. 3 million is nothing to me. Walking out of Tang Ying's office, Qin Guang sat on a chair by the flower terrace in front of the hospital, his mind in a mess. Many thoughts popped up in his mind one after another. Among them, the most frequent thought was to borrow money. Currently, his father still had about 1.4 million in his card, which was not far from reaching 3 million. He just had to find someone to borrow 1.6 million from. But who could he borrow it from? He couldn't count on his old buddy Zhu Jifa for that much money. Wenwen? Zhongbai? Ruffy? Tang Ying? Or should he look for Jin Shuiwei and Jiang Yache? Based on the current situation, it wouldn't be too difficult for them to come up with so much money. But why should he borrow money from them? Just based on the fact that we're friends? His family had already gone bankrupt, and he didn't have any assets left. Don't think that it was easy for him to earn money recently. To put it bluntly, he was still just a college student running the internet. Why should he borrow 6 million from someone? With my face? With the cup in my hand? What a joke. Even if someone was willing to lend him the money, Qin Guang couldn't convince himself to take the initiative. There was another way. Go and kill that despicable, shameless bastard who tried to meddle in our affairs. Don't you want to live? I'll kill you right now. You're already dead. Don't mention 3 million, even if you took out 100 million, you'd still be a dead body. Just as this terrifying thought popped up, Qin Guang immediately threw it out of his head. Don't joke around, this wasn't the Sea of Time, this was the real world. Even if he had countless ways to quietly kill the other party, he wouldn't be able to deal with the possible drawbacks after the deed was done. In the end, he was just an ordinary person. If he rashly killed someone, even if he left a trace, he might fall into an irrecoverable state. Qin Guang asked himself, although he had lost control of his emotions and came up with this terrifying thought, but if it really came to that, he might not be able to be ruthless. These chaotic thoughts kept reverberating in the depths of his mind, intertwining with each other. Unknowingly, the sun had already set, and an entire afternoon had passed. His stomach was growling in hunger, and the strong sense of hunger kept stimulating his nerves, finally bringing him back to his senses. Either he killed someone, or he borrowed money. This didn't seem to be a difficult choice. Borrowing money was definitely more reliable than killing someone. Qin Guang sighed and stood up. He held his phone in his hand, and the number displayed on it was Wenwen's number. Although he had never asked about Wenwen's family background, their friendship in the past 3 years had always been simple. But Qin Guang could faintly feel that Wenwen could indeed lend him 6 million, and there was no possibility of her rejecting it. Although this thought in his mind was without reason, but Qin Guang believed without any reason that Wenwen would not reject his seemingly unreasonable request. At this last moment, Qin Guang did not hesitate too much. The person he wanted and was most willing to rely on was indeed Wenwen. He knew that after he made this call, the originally simple friendship between the two would definitely have some changes, be it good or bad. This was not a small number that people could face calmly. This was 6 million. For many middle-class families living in Wujing City, this was a huge sum of money that could change the fate of this family. Qin Guang did not know, in Gokyo University dozens of miles away, Wenwen was standing on the rooftop, and second Uncle Wen was looking at her from behind. Why don't you take the initiative to call him? You know how much he needs money now. Second Uncle Wen asked. In Wenwen's hand, she was also holding her phone. She looked up at the blood-red sunset, her face was indescribable, and she just shook her head slightly. I don't want to. You don't want to help him? Second Uncle Wen asked. Wenwen shook her head again. I want to help him more than anyone else. I even want to personally help him get rid of that reckless troublemaker. But I can't give you the chance, right? I can't bear to part with him. Second Uncle Wen smiled. Don't say that. In fact, what you are most afraid of is not us but himself. Wenwen's expression was very painful and also very conflicted. Indeed, even if I directly give him this money, my mood will not change. What will change is only you and Qin Guang. This is not a knot that can be resolved with words. I can't tell you clearly and I can't tell him with words. Even if on the surface nothing seems to change, but once this thing is done, my relationship with him will never go back to the past. You are not afraid that he will find someone else? Second Uncle Wen asked again. He has recently been quite close with those two celebrities. I'm not afraid. If he really decides to take the initiative to borrow money, he will definitely find me. I don't care about his relationship with anyone else, I only care about my relationship with him. He and I are friends, he is my only friend. You are quite open-minded. Second Uncle Wen didn't say anything else. After saying this, his figure slowly faded into the darkness and disappeared. He knew that Wenwen was in a bad mood now. Although he was happy to see the change in the relationship between Qin Guang and Wenwen, he did not dare to show his pride in front of Wenwen. Above the vault of heaven, the thick clouds dispersed, and a touch of clear moonlight shone from the sky, shining on Wenwen's body. The cold wind blew and Wenwen's clothes fluttered. Her hand holding the phone tightened. She knew that Qin Guang's call should be coming soon. That man would never hesitate for more than a day. He also knew that this call would change something, but he had no choice. Indeed, standing in Wujing City Hospital, Qin Guang's finger was already on the call button. At this moment, a person suddenly poked her head out from the inpatient department. It was Tang Ying, and she shouted, "Qin Guang, come here. Wang Qing is looking for you. It's very, very important. He wants you to go immediately." Chapter 216. Qin Guang's fingers paused as he was about to make a call. He turned to look at Tang Ying on the windowsill. "Why is he looking for me?" Tang Ying shook her head. "I don't know. You know where his ward is? Go talk to him. He called me just now, but he didn't tell me what it was about." When Qin Guang arrived at Wang Qing's ward, he had just finished his meal. His family had already gone home to rest, and only his beautiful girlfriend He Jia was still there. Qin Guang squeezed out a smile. "You look like you've recovered well." Wang Qing smiled embarrassedly. "It's all thanks to God. My brain and stomach are bleeding, but I'm fine." "Why are you looking for me?" Qin Guang was a little anxious. He had just mustered up the courage to call Wenwen, but Wang Qing's delay made the call. He wanted to deal with Wang Qing as soon as possible so that he could call Wenwen tonight. To his surprise, Wang Qing turned his head abruptly and looked at him with burning eyes. "Brother Racing God, I already know what happened to your family." Qin Guang was slightly startled. "So, are you looking down on me for teaching you how to race for money?" Wang Qing shook his head, but because his movements were too big, he seemed to have affected his injury slightly. A trace of pain appeared on his face, and He Jia hurried over to help him. After a while, Wang Qing said again, "I don't mean that. I don't mean to look down on you. What I'm talking about is not only about your mother's illness, but also about what happened today. I asked Dr. Tang to invite you here for this." "I see." Qin Guang suddenly realized that he had been too sensitive. "Brother Qin Guang, I'll lend you money. I'll lend you 3 million. On the other side, Wang Qing didn't give him any time to let his imagination run wild. He suddenly threw out his real intention. Qin Guang was stunned. He didn't expect Wang Qing to be so straightforward. He didn't even understand that his friendship with Wang Qing hadn't reached this point, so there was no reason for him to be so generous. Of course, his family wasn't lacking in money, but he had no reason to help her like this. "Just because you admire my driving skills? Stop messing around. You just survived a tragic car accident, okay?" He even swore yesterday that he would never race again. "No matter how good my driving skills are, it has nothing to do with him, right?" Seeing that Qin Guang was silent, Wang Qing could roughly guess what he was thinking and continued, "Big brother Qin Guang, although we haven't known each other for a long time, I can roughly understand your feelings. Although you're born into an ordinary family and look like you're easy to talk to, you're actually very proud, aren't you?" Qin Guang waved his hand. No, I'm not arrogant at all. If you're really not arrogant, you wouldn't have hesitated for even a second when I offered to lend you money, right?" Wang Qing grinned, but he was very careful to control his movements, for fear that it would affect his injury again. Qin Guang was stunned at first, and then he smiled. "What other conditions do you have? Tell me, I've been waiting for you to say this." "Actually, I've already contacted a friend in Hong Kong a few months ago. I asked him to prepare a car for me. It was just modified a few days ago, and the race has also been arranged. It's going to be tomorrow night." Wang Qing only said one sentence, and Qin Guang could roughly guess what he wanted to say. "Sure enough," he continued, "the reason why I was so anxious the day before yesterday was that I was going to Hong Kong today. I was afraid that I would change the track there, and I wouldn't be able to grasp the fleeting inspiration and miss the opportunity to have an epiphany. It's a pity that my talent is limited, and in the end I was still unlucky. Now that I've survived, I don't want to race again. However, in addition to this, the moment I rushed out of the Fengquan mountain track, I finally understood one thing." Qin Guang wondered, "What is it?" As Wang Qing spoke, he gradually became excited again. "I finally know that no matter how hard I work, no matter how hard I try, I can't catch up to brother Qin Guang's level. It's not that I don't work hard enough, but that I'm naturally not as good as you. The same S-shaped curve, even if I use all my strength, I still can't float over it like you. Your control of the car's performance, your analysis of the car's inertia, your grasp of the friction between the car's wheels and the ground, these things are simply wonderful. The gap between me and you is not something that can be made up for by hard work. You're the real genius, and your driving skills are not something that people like me can learn and imitate." Qin Guang sighed. "That's true, so it was a mistake for me to try to teach you guys." Wang Qing shook his head slightly. "Don't talk about this anymore. What's more, we were the ones who insisted on learning how to drive. In order to get a place, I even offended a little brother named Zhong Bai. It's true that I won't race again and I don't want to struggle anymore. I also heard from Dr. Tang that you also vowed not to race again. However, I can't agree with this. You're a natural racer and you obviously have skills that no one else can reach. There's no need to let your talent be covered by dust because of me. Qin Guang shook his head. Do you want me to go to Xiangjiang to participate in the race on your behalf? But I really don't want to race anymore. Wang Qing tried to get up, but He Jia held him down. No, you must go. I'll lend you 3 million. Solve the problem in front of you. But my condition is that you must participate in the Xiangjiang mountain track. With your strength you can get at least 10 million yuan. You'll be able to pay me back easily. 10 million yuan. Qin Guang was shocked. He had thought that the prize money of the mountain track would be very high, but when he really got the specific number, he couldn't help but be shocked. This could indeed solve his urgent problem. Didn't you say 3 or 4 million yuan before? How did it become 10 million yuan now? Qin Guang vaguely remembered what Wang Qing said when he was chatting with him at Fengquan Mountain that day. Wang Qing grinned. If I go, I can only get 3 or 4 million yuan at most. But if you go, won't it be 10 million yuan? He paused and said again, I know that my request may be a little difficult and even a little too much. If it was someone else, this request of mine might be enough to send that person into a dangerous situation, but I know you're different. You're really different. You're the strongest racer that I can imagine in my life. No matter how fierce the competition on the mountain track is, you can't lose. You won't be in any danger. Wang Qing's emotions gradually became more and more excited. Although he had given up racing, it was obvious that the passion in this kid's heart was not so easily extinguished. Brother Qin Guang. As long as you are willing to participate in the race, no one in this world can be your opponent. The modified car that my friend prepared for me is the culmination of my years of painstaking efforts. My driving level may be far inferior to yours, but my car modification skills are definitely the best in the whole of Wujing City. I signed up for the annual car gambling race. If I directly choose to withdraw because of injury, this car that I've invested 10 million yuan in may be given away for nothing. Qin Guang was puzzled. Car gambling race? There's such a thing? Can't you just find someone to help you participate in the race? Then it won't be considered a withdrawal, right? Chapter 217. Wang Qing shook his head and said, Let me explain the rules of the competition to you first. You'll understand after listening to it. The entire competition was divided into 2 stages. The first stage was the normal elimination round, and the second stage was known as the race to protect the car. The elimination round was divided into 4 rounds. In the first round there were 8 groups with 8 cars in each group, for a total of 64 cars. The top 4 of each group would advance to the next round. The champion of each group could choose one of the 4 cars that were eliminated. The chosen car would be locked in the garage until the end of the race. In the second round there were 4 groups with 8 cars in each group, for a total of 32 cars. If the group champion of the first elimination round still won the group champion of the second elimination round, then one of the 4 eliminated cars in the second elimination round could be pre-selected and locked in the garage. However, if he didn't win the championship again, even if he entered the top 4, he would lose the chance to take away the car he won in the first round, even though he could enter the next elimination round. In the future he would no longer have the chance to choose a car. Apart from that, if the champion of this round didn't win in the first round, he would also not have the right to choose a car. All in all, he couldn't lose even once. That was the reason why the competition in the past had lost its reputation by the end of the second round. In the third round there were only 2 groups left, with 8 cars in each group for a total of 16 cars. The rules of the competition were the same as the previous round. If someone could win 3 rounds in a row, he would have the right to take away 3 cars. In the fourth round, the 8 cars would compete in the final round, and the prize money would be divided according to the ranking. The highest prize money could be 8 million and the lowest would be 2 million. Apart from that, the rules of the competition remained the same. If someone could win 4 rounds in a row, he would first receive the accumulated prize money of 8 million, and the chance to take away 4 cars. Of course it was easy to say but difficult to do. When it came to racing, it was extremely difficult to win 1 round of the championship, not to mention 4 rounds in a row. Even if one performed extremely well, as long as he lost the championship in one of the 4 rounds, he would only get 2nd or 3rd place, and he would not be able to take away any cars. Therefore the competition was just a gimmick. However, if someone could win 4 rounds in a row, it meant that he had the ability and potential to dominate the race. After that, the real climax of the car racing competition would come, and the terrifying battle to protect the car would begin. The appearance of an expert who had already proven his strength after winning 4 rounds in a row would attract true top-notch experts. The owners of the locked cars would also try their best to hire experts to protect their cars. If the champion of the 4 elimination rounds wanted to take away the car he had chosen, he would have to participate in the next 3 rounds of battles to protect his car. In these 3 rounds of battles, the champion would have to face the siege of the 7 new cars by himself and fight his way out of the encirclement. Different from the knockout stage, those who dared to directly participate in the battle to protect their carriage were all top-notch experts, and none of them were easy to deal with. That was because the driver who won the championship in the battle would not only get the prize money for the battle, but also receive a huge reward from the other car owners. Racers who had won the first 4 rounds, no matter how strong they were, could lose a fat piece of meat at any time. However, risks and benefits always coexisted. The greater the risk, the greater the benefit. If the ace who stood out from the knockout stage could win 3 rounds in a row, he would be able to pick one of the last 4 cars to be locked in the garage. If he won 7 rounds in a row, he would get 7 cars, and at the same time the accumulated prize money would snowball. Wang Qing couldn't say exactly how much it would be. After all, the rankings would be different in the later rounds, but he could foresee that it would be a terrifying number in the tens of millions. Even if he lost the championship and the car racing competition came to an end, as long as he could stay in the top 4, the competition could continue, but only the prize money could continue to be accumulated. Therefore, even if he couldn't win the championship and lost his car, as long as he made it to the top 4 in the 5th round, he would still get the tens of millions of prize money. For many racers, this was a holy land where they could reach the top in a single step. However, behind this beautiful thing, there was often a dark side that reeked of blood. Over the years, only a small number of people were able to achieve success in this increasingly cruel gambling war, but even more people lost their lives in vain. After listening to Wang Qing, Chen Guang grinned. He wasn't worried that he would get into an accident, but he still recognized the difficulty. So, actually, no one can really take the car away. This requirement is a little too exaggerated and harsh. Even if you think with your toes, you'll know that even if you make it to the end of the car race, you'll be the world's enemy. Who can guarantee that you can continue to win? You have to win 3 rounds in a row. Isn't that a fantasy? You don't have to worry too much about your car. It won't be lost. Wang Qing nodded. That's true. In fact, it's been 3 years since anyone has been able to take a car away from a car racing competition. After all, the further you go, the more masters there are likely to appear. The more people there are likely to have their cars taken away, and these people will try their best to hire masters to mess things up so that they can keep their cars. But what I care about the most isn't how much money my car is worth. I just don't want my years of hard work to go to waste without even having a race on the track. Also, I've already vowed to never race again. This is also my last dream. Brother Qingguang, whether it's to help me or to help yourself, you must participate in the competition. Participating in a car racing competition might just be a trial and a challenge for most people. Betting on cars is just a gimmick to increase the excitement. But it's different for you. You have the ability to win until the end. I firmly believe in this. The cars you win, they're all yours. I don't want them, not even one. You can get more than just the 10 million prize money. You can also get 7 expensive luxury cars. At the same time, Qin Guang's breathing gradually turned heavy. Previously, when he saw Lu Fei, Zhong Bai, and the others drive a supercar team to the school, even though he said it was disdainful, he understood that the roar of the engines had indeed shocked him to the core. What if I can also have 7 of these cars? Just the thought of it made his heart beat faster and faster. He tried hard to control his emotions, but in turn, he poured cold water on himself. I know my driving skills are amazing, but aren't you too confident in me? If I want to win until the end, the competition will become more and more intense, right? Wang Qing thought for a moment, then said again, it's indeed difficult, but there are people who have done it. 4 years ago, Tommy Diesel appeared out of nowhere on the Mid-Mountain racetrack, and in the end he took away 7 cars at once. There are at least 9 people in the world who are as competitive as he is. These 10 people are called the top 10 car kings by those of us who love racing. They have all won a car racing competition. Dominating the car racing competition is the only way for an ordinary driver to ascend to the throne. Of course, since the first car racing competition was held in Los Angeles 30 years ago, it wasn't until 10 years ago that Sonics won for the first time. In the following years there have been many masters. Including Diesel, who won the most recent championship, there are only these 10 people who have won the race and are recognized as the car kings. There have been no less than 50 people who have died in the race. I'm not going to die in the race. Qin Guang grinned. I've died 95 times in the Racing Gods Cup, and that was in a modified Alto. If I still died driving a supercar in the real world, it would be a waste of the 95 times I've died in the Racing Gods Cup. Although he hadn't really raced before, Qin Guang knew that he, who had been trained in the world in a cup, was definitely not a fake. His fighting spirit gradually rose. He didn't have a lofty dream like someone like Wang Qing, but he was about to faint from the potential profits that exceeded his expectations. 7 luxurious cars and a reward of tens of millions. The old man is just a driver who earns a few thousand yuan a month, okay? I can't calm down at all. If I can really win in the end, will the top 10 car kings come? I'm quite curious how good they are. Wang Qing nodded. We can't rule out the possibility that 7 of the top 10 car kings, including Dominic Diesel, will come. At their level, money is one thing, but if there are new opponents who can make their blood boil, they will go crazy with excitement. Whether it's for money or fame, they will flock to you. If that really happens, it will be the biggest event in the world's underground racing world. Qin Guang smiled. I don't really understand the mentality of you street racers, but I can roughly understand the logic behind it. It's lonely at the top, right? Wang Qing grinned. The underground street racers are not the same as the public rally racers. People like us have a crazy gene in our bones. We would rather tie our heads to our waistbands and be infatuated with the crazy rush of adrenaline, not to mention the top 10 car kings who have reached the pinnacle of their skills. Looking at the world, it's been 3 years since anyone has truly ascended to the throne in any of the racing competitions, and no one has even made it to the last round of the race. I think those people must be quite lonely. Chapter 218. The light in Qin Guang's eyes grew brighter and brighter. Do you know how good those top racers are? Have you seen them compete with your own eyes? Wang Qing turned his head and looked straight at Qin Guang. After a while he said, You're finally tempted. Qin Guang laughed. Money moves people. I'm just an ordinary person. A man can't be rich without a windfall, and a horse can't get fat without night grass. Not to mention night grass that can make me fat in one bite. How can I not be tempted? Night grass? Wang Qingjin never expected that Qin Guang would use such words to describe his dream, which he nearly choked on his saliva. After adjusting his breathing, he said in a heavy tone, 4 years ago when Diesel participated in the competition, I was still a kid. However, I watched the entire process and at that time I already knew a lot about cars. I believe that you're stronger than him. Much better. You really have a lot of confidence in me. Qin Guang said again, but he fell into deep thought. It's not that I have a lot of confidence in you, but you really don't understand what it means to run 8 minutes with my car at Fengquan Mountain. Running an average speed of 150 kilometers per hour to the end of Fengquan Mountain. Heavens, we built this road ourselves and we know how difficult it is. We don't believe that anyone in this world can do it. Qin Guang was indifferent. He thought to himself, if you knew that I was just casually running that day and didn't use my full strength, would you faint again? While Qin Guang was letting his imagination run wild, Wang Qing suddenly reacted and turned to look at him. Brother Qin Guang, you don't really think that Zhong Bai and I are stupid rich second-generation kids, do you? Damn. Look at your expression. Don't try to hide it. Qin Guang chuckled. Isn't that the case? I just drive a little better. I really think that you guys are too respectful to me. You guys are too easy to fool. I feel that you guys are very silly and naive. You. Wang Qing almost spat out a mouthful of blood. He truly felt that it was a complete waste for such a terrifying divine technique to fall into the hands of someone like Qin Guang. Wang Qing slumped against the back of the bed, his heart about to break. After a long while, he said faintly, Brother Qin Guang, we call you the god of racing, not to be polite. We're not respecting you, we're worshipping you. You know what? We worship you. We feel that you are a true god. True god. Damn it. If you say that, I won't be taken as the leader of some evil cult and be captured and shot, right? Qin Guang rolled his eyes. Are you exaggerating? Wang Qing put on a pained expression. Is that exaggerated? Now transportation is convenient, and we don't lack money. Let's not talk about Zhongbai. Let's talk about me. All these years, in order to learn how to drive, I've watched all kinds of large-scale competitions. Other than Dominic Diesel, I've watched the live competitions of the other racing kings at least 5 or 6 times. Otherwise, how could I be called the best in the 5 capitals? Can you say that I'm a frog in a well and short-sighted? Isn't that pure nonsense? I'm someone who's seen the world. I'm Wang Qing, the son of Wang Guxiong. How many people in both the underworld and the underworld in Wujing City have to give me face? Why is it that after sitting in your car once, they're willing to prostrate themselves in admiration and listen to everything you say? Haven't you thought about why? Wang Qing's heart really ached. I worship you like a god, but you only treat me like a clown. My hot blood has spilled into the dog kennel. If you really listened to everything I said, you wouldn't be lying here. Qin Guang's words made Wang Qing's pretentious act go down the drain. Alright, don't mind the details. I've seen a lot of people race, and I've also seen people occasionally drift to such a degree like you. But there's never been anyone who could drive to the limit in all the corners of the track like you did, and control the car so precisely like a precision instrument. No, you've even surpassed a machine. If others wanted to play like you, they wouldn't be able to survive even if they had 10 lives. Qin Guang chuckled. I've probably lost 95 lives to practice this skill. 10 lives wouldn't be enough. Finishing Phoenix Spring Mountain with an average speed of 150 kilometers per hour, hee. Even if Diesel came to Phoenix Spring Mountain to train for a year, he wouldn't be able to do it. He wouldn't even be able to surpass 135 kilometers per hour. I almost lost my life, and I still couldn't surpass 110 kilometers per hour. I'm just trying to surpass the last yard. They say that the further you go, the harder it is to improve. Motherf asterisk Ker, I just want to improve by 1 yard. But I'm F asterisk King 40 yards away from you. You're practically cheating. You're not human at all. I've already said this much. Brother Racing God, let's go. Wang Qing's emotions were out of control again, and he began to dance. He Jia, who was beside him, decisively pressed a button, and the bandages that had been prepared for him immediately came into effect. They quickly tightened, and the young man was once again tied up like a dumpling. Qin Guang ignored him. Instead, he stood up and began to pace back and forth in the ward, thinking hard in his mind. Before today, he roughly knew how good his driving skills were after practicing in the Heavenly Holy Grail, but he didn't have a clear idea. He only knew that he was definitely very good, very strong, and based on the standards of Dota's hellish training grounds, he should indeed be the best in the world when it comes to racing. But before that, he really didn't think about participating in any competitions. His understanding of racing before he met Zhong Bai and the others was only at the level of watching rally races on Central TV's Department 5. The so-called underground racing in his eyes was nothing more than a group of ignorant, yet stupid rich second-generation rich kids who were bored out of their wits. He had never thought that there would be any deeper meaning behind it. As for how much those regular rally champions could earn in a year, he had a rough idea in his mind. At most, it would be a few million or tens of millions. With his own strength, it wasn't impossible for him to win the rally championship. But now he was just a poor college student. Inexplicably, he went to someone else's team and told them that he was 10 times better than them. Let him participate in the competition, and he would bring them along to show off and fly? It would be strange if they didn't beat him up with a stick. Well, even if they really believed him and let him run one lap and knock everyone off their feet, they would still let him join the team. A new problem arose. Competitions weren't always possible. To participate in international or even domestic competitions, one had to sign up, register, and verify one's qualifications. It didn't matter if one was a racing god or a racing god. Without the proper procedures, one couldn't even qualify to participate in the competition. By the time he was done with all the unimaginable procedures, it would take him at least half a year to go from an ordinary person to a racing driver. He couldn't wait. Even if he really made it all the way, why would a new driver with no name or surname be allowed to participate in international competitions from the very beginning? He would have to fight his way through the domestic competitions one level at a time. The prize money in domestic competitions was low, and there were a lot of unspoken rules. God knew when he would be able to stand on the top of the international competition like an F1 driver like Schumacher and make a name for himself. It would take at least 2 or 3 years and at most 5 or 6 years. By then it would be too late. As for underground racing, after meeting Zhong Bai and the others, Qin Guang had only thought of opening a racing god training class because of his inertia and vision. He had never thought of participating in any competitions. Until today, when Wang Qing in his own way suddenly opened another door for Qin Guang that belonged to a real racing family. It suddenly dawned on Qin Guang that underground racing could actually make money like this. So much money. Chapter 219. Of course, the mid-mountain racetrack wasn't really without a threshold. Just the car requirement alone was enough to keep out most of the ambitious people who were as fragile as a piece of paper. You can't even get a car worth a few million, so what are you going to use to compete? However, Wang Qing had already paved the way for him to compete. He had already signed up, so there was no need to check his qualifications. He had even prepared the car for him. Now Qin Guang was just missing an answer. This was a sudden opportunity to change his fate that had fallen from the sky. Qin Guang could no longer remain calm. However, this was still an extremely important decision. Qin Guang hesitated for a moment. All right. Even if you really have full confidence in me and I know what level I'm at, I'm not confident that I can win until the end. Just thinking about it makes me feel that it's a bit difficult. Wang Qing continued, it doesn't matter even if you really lose in the last round. You already have a $10 million prize, don't you? You have to give me a definite answer. Are you going? Qin Guang smiled viciously. Of course I'm going. I was just being humble out of habit. Not only am I going, but I'm also going to win until the end. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it big. This is my chance to change my life. I can't refuse this kind of temptation. The world of the rich is really scary. I never thought that racing could make money like this. You'll definitely be able to keep winning. Oh right, can I participate every year? If there's only one time a year. Qin Guang couldn't stay calm anymore. As long as he took this gamble, he would be able to lead his parents to a life where they didn't need money anymore. How could he stay calm? If it was only once a year, he didn't dare to think about it. He really didn't dare to think about it. Wang Qing looked at him angrily. You wish. However, there's always a rule in these kinds of races. If you win this time, you can't take away the car as the winner anymore. Not only in the half-mountain racetrack, but also in other races around the world. Even if you win again, the car won't be given to you. Otherwise, if the top 10 car kings secretly reached a tacit agreement, wouldn't this race become an ATM for you guys? Then what was the point of others playing? Besides, he only needed to win once to prove his strength and status as the king of cars. Wasn't that enough? The publicly acknowledged king of racing could only participate in the battle to protect his car and be the final touchstone for the new king of racing. Of course, it's more likely that it's a threshold that no one can cross. After hearing this, Qin Guang sighed, feeling very regretful. So I forget it. It's good that I'm only participating this time. Otherwise, I'm really afraid I'll get addicted. Although I don't like racing, I like money. 10 Great King of Cars. After this year, I'll let them know that there are 10 racing kings, but I'm the only racing god. Qin Guang stood up with lofty sentiments. Through the training of the world in a cup, Qin Guang became the best English speaker in the world. Well, no one would take it seriously even if he told them about it. Even he himself could not understand it. The world's best English speaker? Full of Chinibu aura. He had also become the best Dota player in the world. Well, the terrible sequelae had prevented him from reaching the third set, and from time to time Jiang Luhua would appear out of nowhere and hit him in the head with a stick. He had the ability of a great god, but it couldn't last long. He had also become the best sharpener in the world. Forget that tragedy. Then this time he finally decided that even if it was just a momentary brilliance, he would show another skill he had mastered to the world. Taking advantage of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, he wanted to tell the world that he was the best racing person in the world. Even if it was just a momentary brilliance, it would still be dazzling. He would change his fate in one fell swoop. From now on he would no longer be a poor man. His ambition was gradually ignited, and his blood could no longer cool. About half an hour later, the 3 million that Wang Qing had lent was transferred into Qin Guoli's bank card. As for Qin Guang himself, he had already set off for the airport. He didn't want to tell Qin Guoli what he was going to do, so he only asked Tang Ying to help pick up the donor according to the original plan. He would give the donor a price of 4 million. For the sake of his mother's illness, Qin Guang was willing to pay any amount of money. The kidney was in someone else's body, and he wanted to take it from someone else to save his mother's illness. Qin Guang didn't think it was shameful for the donor to ask for such an exorbitant price. On the contrary, he was grateful to the other party. It wasn't a strand of hair or a finger, it was a kidney. The hateful one was the guy who had interfered. You're rich, right? 3 million, right? I'll slap you to death with 4 million. Let's see how rich you are. Qin Guang wasn't even worried that the other party would continue to raise the price. Since he was going to participate in the competition, he had to have the determination and courage to succeed or die trying. As long as he could win in the end, 4 million wasn't a big deal. He could even afford 5 or 6 million. As long as the problem could be solved with money, it wouldn't be a problem. He had used the power of fate to make a perfectly compatible kidney appear in his mother's life. How could he let anything happen to it because of money? As long as he was sure that he could pay back the money as soon as possible, he would dare to be thick-skinned and borrow money from anyone. I'll pay it back in a few days. I won't fall so easily. No one can take my mother's life away from me. After parking the car in the parking lot of the Wujing airport, Qin Guang quietly leaned against the driver's seat, still waiting for Lu Fei. He was unfamiliar with the people and the place in Xiangjiang, so he needed someone to lead the way. When Lu Fei knew that he was going to participate in the competition in Xiangjiang, she immediately volunteered. According to her, she was familiar with the roads in Xiangjiang, and she wouldn't feel at ease if someone else took the job. Zhong Bai originally wanted to come, but he was asked by Qin Guang to help Tang Ying go to the city where the donor was located and bring her over as soon as possible to prevent any possibility of accidents. Qin Guang could tolerate anything. He could accept any accidents, but he didn't wish for anything to happen to his kidney. After all, he couldn't rule out the possibility of the troublemaker making a move first. Thus, he decided to let Zhong Bai, who had nothing better to do, make a move. Anyway, he owed a favor and there was no need to worry about the debt. He could pay it back slowly. As for the final exam that would follow in 2 or 3 days, Qin Guang could only give up and wait for the makeup exam at the start of the next semester. Since he wanted to give up the exam, he should call teacher Zhua and ask for leave. Anyway, the plane would leave at about 10:40, and Lu Fei would take a while to arrive. Qin Guang dialed Zhua Jingxi's number. It was already 9:30 at night. Zhua Jingxi seemed to have gone to bed, and there was a hint of laziness in her voice. Chapter 220. She was a little surprised to suddenly receive a call from Qin Guang. "Qin Guang, why are you calling me so late at night?" She purposely kept a distance between them as she spoke, because she realized that just seeing this student's phone number made her heart pound. After the incident with Wang Ren, Zhua Jingxi could no longer face Qin Guang like an ordinary student. Qin Guang thought for a moment and said, "Teacher Zhua, I will be on a plane to Xiangjiang in about an hour. It will take at least 8 days for me to come back. I'm afraid I will have to miss the final exams. I would like to trouble you to help me sign up for the makeup exams." "What?" Zhua Jingxi suddenly sat up straight on the bed. "There are still 4 compulsory courses including physics and chemistry. How can you miss the exams just because you say so? What are you going to Xiangjiang for?" Qin Guang was silent for a moment before continuing, "I don't want to tell you the specifics. In short, as long as it doesn't break the law, I have to go. This is very important. It's related to my mother's treatment fees." "Qin Guang, don't do anything rash. Recently, I've been discussing with Sun Xiaoxuan about donating to you. We can gather at least 100,000 yuan if we call for help in the academy." As Zhua Jingxi spoke, she agitatedly stood up from the bed and paced around the room in a panic. She didn't even care about the cold night wind blowing through the gaps in her silk pajamas and into her body, making her feel cold all over. Qin Guang smiled bitterly. Sun Xiaoxuan was like this. She always liked to hide her concern for you until the moment she showed it to you. "Thank you, Teacher Zhua. Please thank Sun Xiaoxuan for me too. But it's not enough. It's really not enough. The amount is too much. Besides, the person who's sick isn't me, it's my mother. The people in the class will be easy to talk to, but the people in the other classes in the academy won't be so willing. Don't force others too much. It won't be good for you and Sun Xiaoxuan." In the end, Qin Guang decided to refuse their kindness. They already had a debt of several million yuan. For the sake of a few tens of thousands of yuan that they might be able to scrape together, Sun Xiaoxuan and Teacher Zhua would have to owe everyone in the academy a favor. This was too difficult. After hanging up Zhua Jingxi's call, Wenwen's call came not long after. The two of them looked at the phone in silence for a while. Qin Guang was the first to lose his cool. He forced himself to sound relaxed. "What's wrong? Our campus bell is calling me so late at night. Do you miss me?" Wenwen, who was on the other end of the phone, spat. "I didn't miss you. Your mother is going to have surgery in a few days, right? How are the preparations going?" Qin Guang's heart skipped a beat. He rarely told her about his mother. Could it be that she knew something? "It's all right. I'll prepare to receive the donor tomorrow." With Professor Liu as the surgeon, there shouldn't be any problems. Qin Guang thought for a bit and lied to Wenwen. Wenwen was speechless. "Why aren't you talking?" Qin Guang asked again. Wenwen took a deep breath and said, "Although I don't know where you are now and what you're planning to do, I don't know. But since you can think of a way to solve it yourself, I can rest assured. In short, take care of yourself. I'm still waiting for you to come back and play with me." "Of course. Just wait for me to use Ghost to carry the entire game. If you are willing to choose support to protect me, it would be good for me to turn the tables with a big Naga holy sword in my hand." Qin Guang laughed. After chatting with Qin Guang for a while, Wenwen hung up the phone. No one knew if she was talking to second Uncle Wen or talking to herself. "This guy has always been like this. You would rather take the risk yourself than owe me more. Is our friendship that important to you? I know you're a good driver, but that's racing. Why don't I send a few people to protect him? If he dies there. Second Uncle Wen's voice suddenly rang out. Shut up. He won't die. Wen's voice sounded a little shaky. Protect? Oh. He's going to race. What will protect him? I can only trust him. Although I don't know what happened to him, I know that he's getting stronger at a speed that I can't understand. Second Uncle, I actually don't understand him that well. But that's not important. It's enough that he understands me. Chen Guang finally waited for Lu Fei. The two of them didn't exchange too much pleasantries and directly prepared to set off. Lu Fei seemed to want to say something but stopped. She seemed to want to stop Chen Guang from going to Xiangjiang to participate in the competition. Wang Qing's accident also had a great impact on her. But when she saw Chen Guang's bright eyes that seemed to be able to penetrate the void, she knew that nothing she said would be of any use. A pair of iron wings slowly rose in the cold night sky, taking the two of them straight to Xiangjiang, thousands of kilometers away. Lu Fei looked at Chen Guang, who was lying beside her and sleeping like a child. A trace of rare tenderness flashed through her eyes. The sleeping racing god seemed to be much cuter than the awake one. Unconsciously, she slowly reached out her hand and wanted to touch Chen Guang's face, but halfway through she withdrew her hand like a frightened rabbit, because Chen Guang turned over. That night, many people in Wujing City were destined to be sleepless. Wang Qing, who was lying on the hospital bed, was so excited that he tossed and turned. Zhong Bai and Tang Ying, who were driving overnight to the southeast province thousands of kilometers away. Zhuo Jingxi, who was standing by the window and looking at the direction of Xiangjiang, didn't know whether it was warm or cold. Over and over again, Sun Xiaoshuan edited the words in his heart, but in the end he deleted all of them. Chen Guoli, who was squatting by the window of the corridor outside the ward and smoking one cigarette after another. An Wenwen, who was sitting cross-legged on the roof of the dormitory with her eyes closed and a white aura flowing around her, made Second Uncle Wen tremble with fear. As early as halfway through the flight, Chen Guang woke up, and then he began to do some strange things that Lu Fei couldn't understand. For example, he first very seriously checked his mobile phone. Maybe it was not a mobile phone anymore. As early as when the plane took off, the flight attendants asked everyone to turn off their mobile phones. At that time, Chen Guang suddenly realized something, and then he took out his mobile phone and began to disassemble it on the spot. The mobile phone body, the back cover, the battery, and the SIM card were disassembled one by one, and then put into different trouser pockets. The flight attendants thought that he was deliberately making trouble, and looked at him with a hidden bitterness in their eyes. Chen Guang didn't explain to anyone, but just shrugged his shoulders mysteriously. In addition to this, after he woke up, he inexplicably asked the flight attendants in the first-class cabin to send him several business magazines. Reading books was fine. After reading for a while, this guy would pick up his cup, take a big gulp of water, and then put the cup down tastelessly, with a look of great regret on his face. Lu Fei felt a headache. How can you feel like you're enlightened by drinking a mouthful of water? At this time in Chen Guang's mind he was thinking, I'm going to become a millionaire, and I'm about to step on the broad road of life. How to spend money, how to make money, such a high-level skill, I must master it as soon as possible. After thinking about it, the most reliable way was to ask for help from the heavenly Holy Grail. That was why he purposely read business magazines, intending to forcibly rely on business methods. In the end, halfway through, when he felt that he was almost done and was about to summon the world in the cup by luck, he suddenly remembered that it was the world of punishment this time. Seeing that Ling Tian couldn't bear such a high-level cultivation system of business ability, he then put the cup down disinterestedly. Chapter 221. Brother Chen Guang, don't tell me you're nervous because you're going to participate in the car racing competition? There's no need to, as long as you perform normally no one can outrun you. Lu Fei couldn't stand it anymore and asked. Chen Guang turned his head abruptly and looked straight at her. No. I'm just thinking, after I earn this sum of money, what should I do to make more money as soon as possible so that I can become a super rich like you and Zhong Bai's family? You're not nervous at all. You're reading business magazines now because you're already thinking about how to spend this money. You haven't even seen your own car and you're already thinking about spending money. Doing business. Lu Fei, who was traumatized, only replied with these three words. What you said makes sense, but it's the same as saying nothing. Lu Fei snorted. Just like that day when you pretended to teach me the real thing but ended up running back to school at 80 miles per hour. This was retribution in one's life. Chen Guang was in a pain in the ass, getting caught in his own trap. I'm sorry. I'll give you special training later, okay? Qin Guang decisively betrayed his oath. Lu Fei looked him up and down. I heard that someone swore not to teach people to race anymore? Lu Fei dealt a fatal blow to Qin Guang. Qin Guang shrugged forcefully, don't mind the details, oaths are meant to be broken. I always feel that you're trying to deceive people and trick me. Fine, even if you don't lie, I don't want to learn anymore. Recently, Wang Qing got into trouble and he wasn't the only one affected. I don't want to race anymore. Just because I like racing doesn't mean I have to race myself, and not many fans watching the World Cup really know how to play football. Lu Fei dealt a fatal blow to Qin Guang. KO. Fine, you win. Lord Guang announced his surrender. I'm just kidding. Lu Fei laughed heartily. She had finally taken revenge for being tricked by him back then. She stretched out her long fingers and poked Qin Guang's shoulder fiercely. You're too anxious. Doing business isn't something that can be easily done. I'm not very proficient in it myself. If you really want to learn, you can come work for me after a while and start learning slowly from the beginning. The way of doing business is profound. What I'm most afraid of is being dragged along without any investment. This bit of money of yours will be squandered away in minutes. Qin Guang pursed his lips. I don't believe it. I'm a genius, I learn everything quickly. I heard that you know Tang Ying's younger brother, Tang Xiaokai? Lu Fei suddenly asked. Qin Guang nodded. We've met once. Why did you suddenly mention that young man? He's a genius, right? He's only 24 years old, but he's already the helmsman of several companies and has a net worth of billions. Qin Guang nodded. I admit brother Xiaokai is a genius. Lu Fei blinked her eyes and looked at Qin Guang with a smile. He probably started learning to do business when he was about 20 years old. Do you know how much money he lost in his first year? I don't know. Lu Fei held up 3 fingers. 3 million? Lu Fei shook her head. 30 million? She continued to shake her head. Qin Guang began to lose his composure. 300 million? US dollars. *CK. Lu Fei covered his mouth. Manners. Manners. This is the noble first-class cabin. Don't let our international friends look down on you. When Qin Guang was about to suffocate to death, the female pirate let go of his hand and looked at him angrily. Do you think it's easy to learn how to do business? Wasn't that a lesson that was learned by throwing money at them? Tang Xiaokai had also lost $300 million in the first year. In the second year he had worked hard to raise funds, and it hadn't been easy for him to raise another 100 million. Taking advantage of the turbulent financial market in the past few years, he had finally switched from finance to real estate and actually controlled several companies. That was how he had managed to reach his current scale. You want to be rich with this little bit of money? Qin Guang touched his face and thought to himself, I have a tiger in my heart, but I can't let it out to bite people. This is the biggest stumbling block in front of me, okay? However, Lu Fei's idea was good. Things should be done step by step. He could really consider working for her later. Although he didn't know what she did, she seemed to be very capable. If I work for you, you won't make things difficult for me, right? Lu Fei smiled wickedly. No, I'll let you be my secretary. If there's something, a secretary will do it. If there's nothing, shut up. Don't ruin your glorious image in my heart. As the two rambled and ridiculed each other, they finally arrived at Xiangjiang. It was about 4:30 in the afternoon, only 3.5 hours before the official race in the evening. After arriving in Xiangjiang, Lu Fei had arranged a car in advance and sent them directly to a modification factory near the mountain track, where Wang Qing's masterpiece was waiting for Qin Guang. Placed in the most conspicuous position in the indoor parking lot of the modification factory was a bright Nissan GTR painted completely with black matte paint. It quietly stopped there like a dull and bloodthirsty beast. On the surface, it looked just like a sports GTR, but just by looking at its price, it was obvious that it had been reborn. Whether it was the engine, the powertrain system, or even the steering control, every part related to performance was no longer the original. This was a mechanical monster that could erupt with a tsunami-like charge at any time. It was just wearing the skin of a little sheep Nissan GTR, but its bones were already filled with the smell of blood belonging to engine oil. Holding back his excitement, Qin Guang walked around the car with a smile, reaching out to touch the matte paint on the car from time to time. In the next 7 days he would fight side by side with it and create a legend that only belonged to him. Obviously, Wang Qing had an inexplicable preference for the Nissan GTR. Qin Guang secretly thought that it was because he was not proficient in the ejection start that ultimately led to the tragedy of rushing off the cliff. This must be the case. Like me, I'm so smooth, a mere ejection start is nothing. Lu Fei, what is this button for? Why haven't I seen it on the previous cars? No. With my English level, I can't even recognize what this word is. The two ran on the test track. Qin Guang turned his head and asked Lu Fei, who was sitting in the passenger seat, curiously looking at the red button in front of him. Don't panic, I'm the god of racing, what's there to be afraid of? Do you think I can fly? Don't press it. This is a nitrogen acceleration system. Can really fly. Before he finished speaking, there was a loud bang from the back of the GTR, and the whole car suddenly accelerated. The strong push made Lu Fei feel like her neck was about to be broken. Lu Fei's head was tightly pressed against the back of the passenger seat, her face pale, and she screamed in shock, clutching the handle above her head tightly. Although she also knew how to race, she had never tried something as crazy as a nitrogen acceleration system. She was completely stunned. If she had known that Wang Qing had installed the NOS on the magically modified car, she would not have gotten in no matter what, and Qin Guang would not have been able to get in the car. He would have dismantled it first. Qin Guang was also stunned. At that moment he suddenly remembered that many years ago when he was still a teenager playing single-player games. Alright, 2 years ago he played Need for Speed. There was such a thing in it. In real life he had never really seen anyone install such a thing in a car. He only knew that when playing Need for Speed, once the NOS system was pressed, the acceleration effect would be too explosive, and the entire scene would turn into fog. Today it did not seem to be much better. Before accelerating he was already close to 200 km per hour. In just a few seconds he had crossed 250 km per hour and was heading towards 300 km per hour. There was a big curve in front of him. Fortunately, his dynamic vision had been tested by the 400 km per hour magically modified Alto in the Racing God training ground. After a short moment of shock, he quickly recovered. He released the button, lightly hit the brake and began to turn the steering wheel. Hit the accelerator. Start drifting. The magically modified GTR pulled a big curve on the test track, and the friction between the wheels and the track caused thick smoke to fill the air. The rear of the car lightly brushed against the track's guardrail, and then it swung along the edge of the track in a beautiful big arc. Good, it floated past unscathed. Finally, when Qin Guang stopped the car, Lu Fei took deep breaths one after another, and her soul was about to leave her body. Awesome. Beside her, Qin Guang suddenly burst out with such a word. Her eyes darkened and she almost fainted. Oh no, this thing definitely couldn't be dismantled. Chapter 222. I say, let's dismantle that thing, shall we? The female pirate, Lu Fei, who was dressed in a sexy leather suit, forcibly squeezed out the appearance of a delicate little sister. She desperately shook Qin Guang's hand, acting coquettishly. Qin Guang turned his head to look at her. He was almost moved by this big sister's soft tone, but he finally shook his head. No, I won't dismantle it. I'm aiming for 7 consecutive victories. This thing is the last resort. If I dismantle it, others will have it. If someone else uses this trick to win, who can I reason with? Lu Fei blushed, but you're not very familiar with the NOS system. You also don't understand the half-mountain racetrack. Although I have complete confidence in you like Wang Qing, I didn't think about the NOS system before. You didn't even recognize this thing just now. Qin Guang smiled, thinking that he was handsome, showing his white teeth. Don't forget, the old man is the god of racing. As long as it's something in the car, even if I haven't used it before, as long as I touch it once, it's not a problem. Don't worry. Also, you can't be in the car during the race. No. What? Lu Fei didn't agree. Although she had secretly decided not to race to be able to sit next to Qin Guang and watch, this kind of thing made her blood boil. How could she miss the opportunity? Besides, she was fooled so badly by this guy last time. Until now, she hadn't really seen him race in the car. Qin Guang shook his head firmly, because I have something outside that I need you to help me deal with. My good sister. Help me this time. I don't want to show my face. I want to win so many cars from others. We're poor and ugly. We have no identity and no status. What if those evil villains have their eyes on us? So after the race I'll let you choose the car. You're my spokesperson. This doesn't conflict with whether I get in the car or not. Lu Fei insisted. Qin Guang shook his head again. There's a second reason. I want to be the god of racing. I want to run the fastest. I have to lose weight. You're too heavy. Burn more oil. It's a waste of energy. Lu Fei, this day next year will be the anniversary of your death. I'll burn an Audi for you. Alright, I'll stop joking. Let me be serious. Ever since I've learned how to drive, I've always been alone in the car. If there's someone beside me, it'll affect my performance. Is this reason enough? Lu Fei was silent. Although she knew that he was talking nonsense, she couldn't do anything about it. All right. If anything happens to you, I'll help you take care of your family. Friends like me are hopeless. Aren't you afraid of that? Don't be so pessimistic. I'm still young. I won't joke around with my life. Chen Guang suddenly appeared very mature and prudent. Then here's the question. Why are your hands on my butt? As Lu Fei spoke, she pinched Chen Guang's waist and picked up a small piece of flesh. Chen Guang grimaced in pain, but his hand that was rubbing Lu Fei's butt refused to let go. Old man is still a virgin at this age. If I'm unlucky today, at least I can remember the feel of your hand when I go down. *CKU. Lu Fei slapped Chen Guang's hand away. Her face was red, but strangely she didn't seem very angry. Truth be told, she knew that despite Chen Guang's relaxed expression, he had never participated in a competition in the past. Furthermore, he had a reason to win, so it wasn't unreasonable for him to lose his composure under the immense pressure. After a simple dinner at 7 o'clock, with Chen Guang's Mad GTR leading the way, followed by 3 Chevrolet off-road vehicles, they set off. The mountain racetrack had been famous for a long time. It was a mixed bag of good people and bad people. Lu Fei was worried that a strong dragon couldn't suppress a local snake. To be on the safe side, she simply used her connections in Xiangjiang to pull a local big shot who had a very high position in Xiangjiang to go to the race. She also brought 3 cars of bodyguards in black suits to help hold the line in case of accidents. After arriving at the place, Chen Guang didn't plan to get out of the car. As he said, he didn't want people to notice his appearance from beginning to end. Even at this time, he was wearing a V special agent mask that he found at the last minute. Lu Fei was a little nervous sitting in the co-driver's seat. It wasn't that she hadn't seen a big scene, but as a person who liked racing, she finally came to the holy land of the underground racing world. Beside her was the strongest racer in history who was about to amaze the world. When she thought that she was about to become a witness and one of the creators of a legend, she couldn't suppress her excitement. It was not even 8 o'clock at this time, but the sky had gradually darkened. The sun had already set, leaving only a scarlet afterglow shining on the horizon. When the afterglow was completely dark, it announced the official start of the annual mountain racing competition. The mountain racing track was indeed full of demons. The huge parking lot was several times larger than the parking lot of Fengquan Mountain. As far as the eye could see, all kinds of expensive luxury cars and supercars were listed. Among the people coming and going, there were strangely dressed young men, there were also businessmen in suits and leather shoes who were unrestrained, and there were also cold-faced bodyguards in tight clothes. What this place didn't lack the least were racers who wore revealing clothes and walked around alluringly. But the most sought after were the racers who arrogantly and impudently sat on the roof of their cars and loudly proclaimed how they were going to kill everyone tonight. This was the holy land of racing. No matter how rich or powerful you were outside in this place, driving skills were the most important measure of status in the Jianghu. Any officially registered racer would be surrounded by at least a few beautiful girls. These racers, whose adrenaline was already running out of control, talked loudly with others while smugly groping the bodies of the racers next to them. Some of them even put their hands into the girls' necklines in front of everyone. Not only did the girls not make a fuss, but they only smiled and twisted their bodies, which further stimulated the crazy hormones of these people. The first-generation Xinguang master expressed extreme envy. If it wasn't for the fact that he had made up his mind to hide his face from the very beginning and not let these extraordinary fellows remember or recognize his identity, he would have jumped out and yelled, "Damn it, I'm the one who is the most arrogant, at least give me 2 girls." He felt sorry for himself. What a loss. No way. I can't admit my loss. They haven't started the race yet and there are already girls touching me. I can't lose in terms of aura at the beginning. He turned his attention to Lu Fei beside him. To be honest, although those racer girls all wore heavy makeup, when it came to appearance, the female pirate Lu Fei beside him, even if she didn't have any makeup on, she would still be better than all the racer girls. After all, she was a full-score goddess and not something those vulgar girls could compare with. Today, Lu Fei was still wearing a short leather jacket, and the thin leather pants on her lower body revealed her slender thighs. It really made Chen Guang drool. When Chen Guang turned his head over, Lu Fei also turned her head over at the same time. Through the mask of the special forces, the two of them looked at each other. Chen Guang's brain was spinning wildly, and he had an idea in an instant. Although my acting skills are terrible, I have a mask now. He deliberately increased his breathing, and the breath that came out of his mouth blew hard on the mask, making a whirring sound. From his eyes, Lu Fei saw a touch of madness that only belonged to a beast. She knew that Qin Guang was infected by the atmosphere of this place. He was no longer a bystander but was about to really participate in it. In fact, Lu Fei herself was not much better. Humans were such strange creatures. When she was in such a crazy and unrestrained environment, and the man sitting next to her was a man she didn't hate and even admired, even Lu Fei easily let down her guard. She grinned. What's wrong? Do you want to touch something? Chapter 223. Qin Guang's eyes lit up. He tilted his head and looked at her with a burning gaze. Can I? Lu Fei turned her head to look outside again. Colorful smoke filled the air and covered the sky. Under the bright lights, men and women with torn masks intertwined with each other. The huge parking lot was filled with a decadent atmosphere that stirred up people's hearts. Racing had always been something that required passion and hot blood. Women could also arouse men's desire and craziness. Women, on the other hand, were fiercely attacked by hormones and smoke and gradually became seductive. Those racing girls shuttled through the crowd like butterflies. Perhaps it was because of this or that in their hearts and their usual self-indulgence, that they were so presumptuous. Lu Fei, whose status was originally not equal to these people, still couldn't help but be influenced by these beautiful women of the same sex. If they were so indulgent, why couldn't I? Letting him touch them wouldn't hurt a piece of flesh, and no one would know what happened in this car. Lu Fei's courage gradually grew, and her breathing became heavy. She tilted her oval face slightly and stared at Qin Guang with a pair of beautiful starry eyes. She said softly, "If you also need this kind of stimulation to stimulate the blood in your heart, if it helps you in racing, then you can." Qin Guang was also excited. He had long been envious of the other racers who were surrounded by women. He would be a bastard if he didn't take advantage of the situation. His goal was so clear. He stretched out his left hand and went straight for Lu Fei's perky chest. Wait. It can't be here. At the last moment, Lu Fei still flinched a little. She fiercely grabbed Qin Guang's left hand that was stretched out. Qin Guang couldn't hide his disappointment. His disappointed eyes pierced Lu Fei's heart through the mask of the special agent team. But Lu Fei's face was red, and she smiled decisively. She pressed Qin Guang's hand down, lifted her but slightly and cushioned his hand. Here. Qin Guang was overjoyed. He exerted force with his left hand and felt the amazing elasticity and fullness. Lu Fei let out a delicate moan. Oh, she didn't know what was wrong with her today. She only had a vague thought, I've been a good person to the end this time. Not only did I escort him, but I also personally brought him to the dining table. I'm simply a great man. She tried hard to suppress the strange emotions in her heart and turned to look at Qin Guang. Suppressing her trembling voice, she said, "If you don't give me the title of Car King, I won't forgive you." 15 minutes, a whole 15 minutes later. Finally, it was Qin Guang's turn to fight in the second group. His demonic claws never stopped for even a second. This fellow really didn't hold back. My right butt is almost swollen from your pinching. In between, he even tried to pull his hand up a few times, and then tried to squeeze in through the gap of the leather pants. I absolutely cannot allow it. Lu Fei let out a long sigh of relief and turned to look at Qin Guang's pants that were about to burst. She almost laughed out loud. She didn't know where she got the courage from, but she stretched out her finger and gave the tent a hard flick. Ouch! Qin Guang yelled as he retracted his hand. Ouch! On the other side, Lu Fei had already taken the opportunity to open the car door. She turned to look at Qin Guang and smiled. Get ready to go, my car god. Let's win the first battle a little better, right? As she spoke, her plump chest heaved up and down crazily, like a sailboat floating on the waves. Her face was flushed with excitement, and her breathing was extremely heavy. It was unknown whether it was because of Qin Guang, or because she was completely immersed in the crazy atmosphere outside. Adjusting the mask on his face, Qin Guang suppressed the excitement in his heart. Although some parts of his body were still swollen, he chuckled and replied, "Of course. I won't lose. Come on," Lu Fei said as she got out of the car. She just got out of the car and closed the door. Qin Guang, who was inside, added, "By the way, why is the steering wheel of all the cars in Xiangjiang on the right? I have to use my left hand to control the gear lever. I'm a little, not used to it." You're not used to the right steering wheel? Aren't you the car god? Lu Fei was dumbfounded. At this time, Qin Guang had already started the car and was ready to enter the queue of cars. The number he drew was number 3, which happened to be in the second row of the queue. Lu Fei stood in the same place in a daze. Her mind was completely blank. Crazy. Why didn't I think of this before? Is it because his car god's brilliance is too dazzling that I didn't notice it at all? Speaking of which, you're too insensitive. You only thought of this problem at this time. Your car god title is a little exaggerated. I thought you were already used to it, but you didn't try it at all. There was basically no adaptation process. It was just the few minutes on the test track when he first arrived, and the 3 kilometers from the modification factory to here. In addition, he was completely unfamiliar with the mountain track. It was his first time and he had only roughly looked at the map before. For ordinary mainlanders, it was quite strange and awkward to use the right steering wheel, driving on the left and shifting with the left hand. There was no adaptation process at all. An avalanche of 2 unfavorable openings. GG Smita. Lu Fei suddenly felt that her head was a little black and her legs were weak. She almost couldn't stand steadily. She even forgot about the charm brought about by Qin Guang's random pinching just now. No matter how she thought about it, she felt that it was F***ket up. This couldn't be the last time that guy pinched a woman's butt in his life, right? Oh my god. If I had known earlier, I would have let him reach in and touch. I can even give you breasts. Lu Fei began to panic. Actually, Lu Fei thought too highly of Qin Guang's insensitivity. Of course, Qin Guang had discovered this problem long ago. But what could he do? He couldn't not turn the steering wheel just because it was on the right? He was already here and everyone's car was the same. There was no time to change the steering wheel from the right to the left. This was a big project. So he bit the bullet and did it. After all, the old man's left hand was very nimble just now. He should be a reliable partner, right? Just now, Qin Guang had been madly touching her butt with his left hand for a while, and suddenly thought of this matter, so he said it casually. Sister Lu Fei? What's the name of this brother car god? Lu Fei returned to the Chevrolet off-road in a daze. Slightly further away, a guy with dyed blonde hair and an afro suddenly came over and said. Lu Fei turned to look at this guy and rolled her eyes. Ajia, let me ask you a question. How long does it take to change the steering wheel from the right to the left? Ajia jumped back. Don't talk to me about this. If you really want to change, don't compete. Withdraw from the competition first. This Ajia was Wang Qing's friend who helped him get a car in Xiangjiang. He could be regarded as a local expert in changing cars in Xiangjiang. People called him Golden Wrench Ajia. However, Lu Fei always felt that since he was from a barber shop, it was more appropriate to call him Golden Scissors. There was a very famous haircut in Wujing City called Ajia. Then it seems that there's really no other way. God bless. Don't ask my brother car god what's his name. He doesn't want people to know his true identity. Lu Fei sighed deeply. Chapter 224. The first group had already set off for about 10 minutes, and the second group, where Qin Guang was waiting quietly at the starting point, with the dull roar of the engine coming one after another. On the cliff next to the starting point, there was a huge white screen about 30 meters long. The huge screen was projecting the final sprint of the first group of contestants. The commentator was screaming at the top of his lungs at an extremely fast speed. However, Qin Guang felt a little bored. The level of these people was too low. Others were watching with passion, but he felt like a professional boxer watching a few children fighting in the mud. The camera on the huge screen kept changing, but it forced a sense of expectation. The organizer was really willing to spend a lot of money. Every corner of the track was equipped with high-speed cameras, and there were 3 helicopters shooting from high altitude in mid-air. There were no blind spots in all directions, and the fierce competition process was completely displayed on the huge screen. The standards of the car gambling competition were extremely high. Although it could not be broadcast on TV, the organizer of the mid-mountain racetrack was rich and capricious. Not only was it fully equipped with all kinds of facilities, but it even hired a professional TV director to broadcast the whole process, and invited a well-known car racing commentator. There was also a huge data analysis team behind it. At the starting point, the finishing point, as well as the 2 rest points in the middle of the track, there were giant screen projections set up to allow every spectator, regardless of whether they knew cars or not, to fully immerse themselves in this blood-boiling atmosphere. The organizer's goal was basically achieved, and the atmosphere was indeed enthusiastic. Take the parking lot of the starting point where Lu Fei was, for example. It was almost crowded, with at least 10,000 people gathered there. Counting the other 3 huge screens, there were at least 40,000 spectators in the whole car gambling competition. Of course, this kind of underground grand event and the gathering of big shots from all sides also made the local police of Xiangjiang fully alert and mobilized thousands of police officers to prevent accidents. At this time, Lu Fei was standing with the local big shot of Xiangjiang next to her. This big shot was Lu Fei's uncle, and was regarded as the top of the rising forces in Xiangjiang. He usually did not show himself and was extremely low-key. Now it was dark, but he still wore a pair of sunglasses and refused to take them off. Even if Lu Fei complained that he was almost blind, he did not respond. Jie usually didn't have the opportunity to be so close to such a big shot. Although he was very good at modifying cars, he was just a small figure in the entire Xiangjiang. He had to thank Lu Fei for this opportunity. When he thought about how the car he had personally modified would be driven by the racing god Wang Qing, who worshipped him to the extreme, he found it hard to suppress his emotions. Jie was subdued by the big boss's aura and didn't dare to say anything else. Seeing that the second group was about to start, he couldn't hold it in anymore. Sister Lu Fei, is racing god really as good as brother Wang Qing says? How is he going to compete today? Lu Fei crossed her arms, feeling uneasy. You're asking how powerful he is? I can only tell you that he's even more powerful than Wang Qing said. Beyond your imagination, subverting your worldview. As for how he plans to compete today, I want to know too. However, this is only the first round of the elimination round, and his opponent is not very strong. Perhaps he will only run around for fun and will not go all out. Even if I want to go all out, I can't, right? After all, you guys came in such a hurry that you didn't even have time to familiarize yourself with the track. Brother Racing God, this is your first time on this track, right? By the way, is the NAS I added strong enough? Did you guys try it on the test track today? F***ck off. Jie touched a sore spot. As soon as he finished speaking, Lu Fei stomped hard on the back of his foot, and then kicked him in the back, sending him flying. Finally getting rid of the fly, Lu Fei adjusted her mood slightly, shook her head and muttered to herself, "Forget it, don't worry about him. There's no point in worrying. Since he's here to do this, of course he's aiming for the title of Racing King. Of course he has to get off to a good start from the first round. Speaking of which, this live broadcast is really good. It's not any worse than a regular race on TV." Although she felt that Qin Guang was a bit of a scammer, Lu Fei always felt that she might be able to witness, participate in the creation of a legend with her own eyes. That guy, he's here to win for 7 days in a row. Just thinking about it made her excited and her heart itch. Lu Fei fiercely turned her head to the middle-aged man in sunglasses beside her and asked, "Uncle Qing, can you help me find the organizer of this race and get the full recording of the 7 days of the race?" Uncle Qing touched his sunglasses. "Xiao Fei, isn't this race usually only 4 days? Why did you say 7 days? Lu Fei didn't know what to say. She didn't speak again, only thinking that if he was really destined to become a legend here, but he didn't want anyone to recognize his identity, it would be too shameful for the legendary racing god to not have a beauty by his side. If it really doesn't work, then this lady will risk her life to accompany him. These few days this lady will give him a lot of benefits. How about I become a racing girl for him? Aren't all men like this? Extreme speed is passion. A woman's body is passion. If you can really keep winning, then this lady will give you enough to touch. Today I'll let you touch my ass. If you can become the champion, then tomorrow I'll let you massage my chest through my clothes. If you can really keep winning, this lady will give you more benefits every time. If you have the ability, then add it to my bed. Of course, you must run a race that can make this lady so excited that her legs go weak. Although this lady's talent isn't that good, she is passionate about racing. If I can't be the racing god, then I'll be the racing god's woman." Under normal circumstances, of course, Lu Fei wouldn't have such crazy thoughts, but today she wasn't normal. She didn't want to be normal. Udal was a racer from India. About a year ago, he was still struggling to find a way out of the slums. But today he was already sitting in car number 1, a Mitsubishi EVO that had been modified beyond recognition. The boss invested $300,000 in this car. The boss said that I'm a genius racer that can't be found in India for decades. I want to use this car. I want to win back 7 cars for the boss. A few $1,000,000. I can get at least $1 million. I'm Udal. I want to use my hands to win back the future that belongs to Udal's family. Udal's blood gradually boiled and burned. He put his foot on the accelerator and stepped on it again and again. The 500 horsepower V6 engine forced into the EVO was making a dull roar. It wanted to devour all the darkness in front of it. Qin Guang's number 3 Mat GTR didn't move. It just quietly parked behind the EVO. It was as quiet as an owl looking for its prey in the night sky. Behind the V-shaped special agent mask, Qin Guang's dark eyes silently looked at the EVO's tail that was madly spewing exhaust gas. His left hand was moving back and forth between the gear lever and the steering wheel again and again. The steering wheel was on the right side and it did cause him some trouble. He had to adapt to changing gears with his left hand as soon as possible. At this time, the referee was standing next to the starting line with a starting gun in his hand. He looked down at his watch again and again. Another referee was standing next to him, holding the Chinese redbud flower flag that represented Xiangjiang. The flag hung on the flagpole was blocking the front of the number 2 car. Another referee was standing on a high platform about 30 meters in front of the starting line, carrying a high-powered spotlight on his shoulder. The girl with long blonde hair and revealing clothes was already standing in the middle of the track. She slightly spread her legs and stood in place like a compass. Her waist was thin, her breasts were huge, and her butt was perky. She was as hot as the hot summer sun. The bikini strap wrapped around the girl's huge breasts was as thin as a spider's web, as if it would break with a gust of wind. Qin Guang's eyes lit up. He sat up straight and thought to himself, this girl's body is really explosive. What is she going to do? Could it be that the legend is true? This girl will take off her bikini in public? And then throw it into the air? Oh my God. So shameful. Does her family know about this? Will such a woman still be able to get married in the future? At this time, the referee who was holding the gun suddenly raised his hand high into the air. The hot girl stuck her fingers into the bikini strap in the middle of her breasts. She was ready to move. The tens of thousands of people who were noisy as if they were going to a market suddenly became dead silent. Lu Fei clenched her fists tightly and pressed on her full breasts. She almost stopped breathing. Bang! The starting gun sounded. The Chinese redbud flower flag was waved and drew a semicircle in the air. The spotlight suddenly flashed. The bikini girl fiercely pulled with her right hand. Under the bright and glaring headlights, the blood-red bikini flew into the air, and 2 huge breasts were unreservedly revealed in front of the world. The 8 mechanical beasts let out a deafening roar at the same time. They suddenly started up and madly sprinted forward. Qin Guang's car racing competition had officially begun. Chapter 225. The second group of the first round of the Xiangjiang car gambling competition has officially begun. I am your commentator, Mr. X. Welcome to the half-mountain racetrack. The commentator's voice came from the loudspeaker. He spoke very fast, loud, and full of passion. Lu Fei's heart was in her throat along with the billowing smoke and dust that soared into the sky. Her eyes stared at the number 3 Mad GTR in the traffic, and she clenched her fists tightly. Qin Guang, win a car king and show me. Jia, is there any problem with the performance of your car? Seeing Qin Guang rushing out from the starting line shoulder to shoulder with the other cars, Lu Fei was too nervous and asked Jia, who was beside her. Jia was furious. Aren't you looking down on my professionalism? Of course there is no problem with the performance of this car. I guarantee it with my reputation. In the whole of Xiangjiang, there are no more than 3 people who can put an 800 horsepower V12 engine into a GTR and adjust the car's power perfectly. I am one of them. You are questioning the professionalism of my team. Jia fiercely patted his chest, expressing his extreme displeasure at Lu Fei's questioning. 800 horsepower? Lu Fei frowned slightly. But he didn't show any advantage at the start. Jia curled his lips. He's in the middle of the cars. He can't crash into the small EVO in front, can he? Don't worry, this car will be able to do whatever the racing god is capable of. It definitely can't drag your racer god down. From the starting line, there was a straight track about 300 meters long. All the drivers were crazily releasing the power of the sports car on this straight track. In ancient wars, swords and sabers were weapons that caused people to shed blood and break bones. But in this race, the roaring supercars were the deadly weapons that these racers used to compete with each other. As for shifting gears with his left hand, Qin Guang was indeed not used to it. At the start, he couldn't show the seamless shift that he was familiar with, and many times he felt sluggish when shifting gears. He also wasn't fully familiar with the powerful performance of this magically modified GTR with an 800 horsepower V12 engine. This wasn't a problem with Jia's car tuning. It was purely because he had just gotten started. The coordination between the man and the car was not perfect, just like when he touched Zhong Bai's Ferrari FF for the first time. Outsiders might not be able to tell, but Qin Guang understood. However, he was not in a hurry. 95 life-and-death experiences in the racing god training ground had long since merged his flawless driving skills into his blood, every inch of his muscles and every bone in his body. What he needed to do now was to slowly get used to the car and the right steering wheel on this 18-kilometer-long winding, mountainous track. Fortunately, in this group, his car's performance was strong enough. Even if he made a mistake in the beginning, he did not fall behind, and he still firmly occupied the third place. In fact, in his usual state he would have accelerated and killed the EVO in front of him. Although it was only 100 meters away from the first bend, Qin Guang did not need to slow down at all and could easily float past it. However, he still restrained his impulses. The whole race was still long and there was no need to rush. He would slowly assimilate the car into his body first. Unlike the regular international rally, this was an underground race without clear rules and regulations. A racetrack. There were no strict rules for participating cars. In terms of equipment, the 500 horsepower EVO of the Indian guy in front of Qin Guang was completely outclassed by Qin Guang's magically modified GTR, which Wang Qing had invested tens of millions of dollars in. Of course, taking into account the complex bends of the track as well as the uphill and downhill sections, the better the performance of the car, the faster it would run. No one wanted to accidentally lose their life here. How many people would not slow down when facing a scissors turn? Therefore, a good car did not necessarily mean that one would win. 4 years ago, a certain pretentious young man had driven a Koenigsegg with more than 1,000 horsepower. He had thought that he was very impressive and had planned to kill everyone, but in the third round he had decisively given the car away to Tommy Diesel, who had appeared out of nowhere. It was a pity that the guy was looked down upon, and even after giving him a big gift, he did not become a good friend of the new king of cars. Lu Fei's eyebrows furrowed even tighter. She also knew cars very well. She thought that since this GTR had a terrifying 800 horsepower, Qin Guang should have accelerated on the straight and overtaken it. How could he let the broken EVO in front of him overtake him? At this time, the front was about to enter the turn. Other than Qin Guang, the other 7 cars had formed a long snake formation on the left. During this period, there were naturally several fights and changes of positions. However, as they were about to enter the turn, no one dared to mess around. No one wanted to be eliminated because of a collision at the beginning. There was still a long time to go. Although Qin Guang was not used to it, he still relied on the good performance of the car and followed the EVO tightly. He did not leave any opportunity for the other Ferrari 599, which was eager to cut in. Qin Guang was a little unhappy. "You want to overtake me? If you have the ability, don't fall into the last 4. If I have the chance, I'll eat your car. Even if you survive this round, you'll become my dish sooner or later." Damn, I suddenly encountered the right steering wheel and I was not used to it. As a result, I was bullied by a dog. Even a cat or dog dares to jump in front of me. Just you wait. At this time, Lu Fei could no longer see the situation in the team formation. However, a helicopter was closely following the team formation and moving forward. The high-definition high-speed camera in the sky was taking a panoramic view of the situation of all the cars and projecting it on the giant screen at the same time. Lu Fei stared at the giant screen and muttered to herself, "The first turn is right in front of us. Perhaps he's planning to show off his terrifying non-deceleration drifting again at the turn?" In the blink of an eye, the McLaren 675 was the first to enter the turn, and it drifted beautifully. The Mitsubishi EVO followed closely, 2 car spaces behind the McLaren. Qin Guang's matte GTR was still behind the Mitsubishi EVO, a full car space behind. Lu Fei's eyebrows furrowed even more. He slowed down. This was not his normal state at all. The difficulty of this turn was not even considered basic on Phoenix Spring Mountain. It seemed that the right-hand steering wheel had indeed caused him some trouble, especially when he was drifting just now. There was a rare momentary tremor in the car. Although it was fleeting, it clearly showed that he was stuck when he was shifting gears. Ajia sighed at the side. "Brother Racing God is drifting quite well. The EVO in front is quite sneaky. His performance is not that great, but it's quite good at getting stuck." Lu Fei shook her head. "This is not even 1/10 of his normal level." Ajia was dumbfounded. "What? Don't brag too much." At this time, Qin Guang had just exited the turn when the Ferrari 599 suddenly pulled to the right, intending to use this 200-meter-long straight road to overtake Qin Guang and the EVO in front. Lu Fei clenched her fists tightly. "No way. This is the first time in my life that I'm seeing the racing god being overtaken?" At this time in the GTR, Qin Guang was also furious. "Damn it. You're taking advantage of me? *CK." He pulled hard and threw the V-shaped special agent team mask to the side. Since he was already on the road, there was no need to be afraid of his face being captured by the camera. At the same time, he pushed the engine's horsepower to the maximum. The exhaust pipe suddenly exploded, spewing flames. All the potential of the V12 engine was completely unleashed at this moment. It's accelerating. Lu Fei cried out in alarm. But he's about to be overtaken. The 599 is accelerating first. It can't be. Is he going to force a parallel? Overtake the EVO first? Will he overtake it now? Ajia also shouted. He was as nervous as Lu Fei. What is this guy doing? Is he trying to snatch a position? Is he crazy? The commentator could not help but shout. Just then Lu Fei shook his head vigorously. No, he won't. Although the 599 has a higher speed, your magically modified GTR has better performance and can accelerate even faster. Just wait and see, he'll overtake you in one breath. Even if it looks like he's infinitely close, everything is actually under his control. This guy, he's angry. Although that was what she said, the nervous expression on her face still revealed her true feelings. Qin Guang's thrilling maneuver not only scared Ajia, but it also caused an uproar among the 40,000 viewers in front of the giant screen. The blonde driver sitting in the 599 was even more furious. Such *T. I'm going to kill you. The Ferrari 599 did not slow down. It was still accelerating. The helicopter's camera was no longer focused on other places. It was completely focused on the position where the three cars were squeezed together, and it kept zooming in. Under the watchful eyes of the audience, the matte GTR and the yellow 599 were approaching each other. The right rear of the GTR and the left front of the 599 were approaching each other at a speed visible to the naked eye. From the perspective of the camera in midair, it seemed like they had completely collided. Oh my God. Chapter 226. Just as everyone was screaming, the timid ones had already closed their eyes, and Lu Fei's eyes were about to bleed. The distance between the matte GTR and the yellow 599 suddenly widened. Although it had accelerated, Qin Guang's car performance was slightly better, and he had finally overtaken his opponent. Udall, who was sitting in the Mitsubishi EVO, was scared out of his wits, but he did not want to give up. He stepped on the accelerator like crazy. But it was useless. His car's performance was completely overtaken by his opponent. Qin Guang and the 599, one in front and one behind, overtook the EVO in an instant. Damn it. The person in the GTR must be a lunatic. Isn't this guy afraid of death? The spectators not far from Lu Fei had already started cursing. The contestant in the number 3 car is playing with his life. The commentator, who had been silent all this time, finally said something. There was a sense of relief in his voice. Obviously, he was also sweating so hard that he had forgotten to explain. Lu Fei gently stroked her sweat-drenched hair. You bunch of naive people, how do you know what kind of person is sitting in that car? In fact, everything was under his control. She thought of a line that often appeared in fantasy novels. She used to think it was funny, but now she felt that it made sense. Ignorant and pathetic mortals, how can you understand the world of God? Qin Guang had gradually found his form, and he would become more and more unstoppable. You are lucky to be able to witness the birth of a god at such a close distance. Let's see how he ascends the altar step by step in 7 days. In ancient legends, God built the city of Rome in 7 days. Now, Qin Guang was going to use 7 days to become a god. A real god. The McLaren 675 in front led the way into the second corner. The distance between Qin Guang and him was still maintained at the level of 2 cars. This guy's car's performance was good enough, and his level wasn't bad. He drew lots and got the first row of seats. His luck was also unreasonably good. It was time for him to show off for a bit. At the second turn, Qin Guang still did not show his terrible non-deceleration magic. He slowed down the car in advance and steadily entered the turn. But Lu Fei knew that it was different. This time his turning and drifting were smoother than the last time. Soon the true divine skill was about to appear. Lu Fei wasn't the most knowledgeable person present, but anyone who dared to sign up for the race had to have some skills. Whether it was the first group that had reached the finish line or the other contestants that were waiting to depart, most of them were staring at the giant screen. There were also some poor racers who hadn't signed up at all, or who had been unlucky enough to have their spots snatched away by people like Wang Qing. The third GTR is a little strange. One of the drivers couldn't help but voice his opinion. What happened? The people around him didn't quite understand. I can't tell exactly what's going on, but I think he's turning more and more smoothly. *T, you think he can improve his skills while running? Also, I think he's running a bit conservatively. He doesn't seem to be familiar with the track at all. He's driving a modified GTR with at least 700 horsepower, And he's not familiar with the track in advance? Is he here to give us money? Don't joke around. How could he be in the last four? Okay, enough talking. Let's keep watching. You'll know. After taking off the mask, Qin Guang suddenly felt refreshed. Wearing a mask still affected his vision, but it was much more comfortable now. He slowed down during the turn not only because he wasn't familiar with shifting with his left hand, but also because he was unfamiliar with steering with his right hand during a sharp turn. But after 2 turns he gradually felt more comfortable. After all, both his left and right hands were his wives, and both his first and second wives were good wives. He used his right hand most of the time to masturbate. Oh no, to eat, play Dota or do anything else. It wasn't difficult for him to get used to the feeling of steering. Turning his head to look at the rearview mirror, the poor EVO had been overtaken again, and the 599 was still hot on his heels. The fourth car was a modified blue Lamborghini. Although it was called LP560, it should have at least 700 horsepower. But so far, Qin Guang's speed had been controlled below 100 miles per hour, which was indeed conservative. The difficulty of the mid-mountain racetrack was not much different from the Fengquan Mountain racetrack, and the corners were sharp and steep, but that wasn't a problem for him. It was about to turn again. Qin Guang got up slightly, stretched his shoulders and calculated the time. I'll familiarize myself with 8 more turns. If I remember correctly, after the 8 turns is a series of Z-shaped turns, and I'll end this boring game there. The race had been white hot at the beginning, but now it had gradually calmed down. The blonde guy in the 599 was a bit of a cheat. Although his car was not bad, his skills seemed to be a bit lacking. At the beginning of the race, when Qin Guang had pressured him, it seemed to have scared him. He had been too conservative when entering the next few turns, and he had actually been overtaken by Udall, the Indian guy with 500 horsepower. This was a drift race that belonged to the bends, and the tyrannical horsepower could only create a slight advantage on the straightaway. In the long 18 kilometers of the race, there was an average of a turn every 200 meters, and there were nearly 100 big and small turns throughout the race. What really determined victory or defeat was the art of controlling the corners. The one who controlled the corners controlled the race. Perhaps, when the race was white hot, there might be a desperate change of direction on the straightaway, but in the first round, where the gap in strength was relatively large, it was difficult to see such a situation. Perhaps in the second round, when the teams with less than 600 horsepower were basically useless, and when everyone's level and vehicle performance were infinitely close, such a situation would really occur. Of course, this certainly did not include Qin Guang's group. Since everyone could see with the naked eye that he was rapidly adapting and becoming stronger, Lu Fei felt a huge weight lifted off her shoulders. When the Racing God training class first started, she had heard from Zhong Bai that Qin Guang was completely unable to adapt to the performance of a sports car. It was also his first time driving a sports car on the Phoenix Spring Mountain racetrack. He was basically playing around in the first half of the race, and only really exerted himself in the second half. As a result, he ran at a terrifying average speed of 138 kilometers per hour. Now, his situation was not much different from that day. Sure enough, after obediently following the McLaren 675 through 7 turns, Qin Guang finally made his move when they were about to enter the Z turn. At this time Master Guang was a little annoyed. Old man remembered wrong. There are only 7 turns. Well, don't mind those details. After all, you only saw the map once. The McLaren driver was still advancing at a familiar pace. He felt that he was in good form today and his luck was pretty good. He had taken the lead from the start, and it looked like he could maintain this advantage until the end. Oh, is the first slightly scary Z turn in front? It doesn't matter. I've run here at least 50 times. He smiled confidently, released the accelerator, and lightly hit the brakes, preparing to enter the turn. He controlled the speed of the corner at 92 kilometers per hour. This was the most perfect drift speed, and he wanted the young people behind him to learn what a perfect drift was. Then he was overtaken. The matte GTR's taillights dragged a dazzling red line across his body. Is this guy crazy? This is at least 110 kilometers per hour. He's going to fly out. Not only him, but the more than 40,000 people standing in front of the huge screen were also in an uproar. This guy's brakes are broken, right? Is he going to die? Poor guy. Not good. The third driver's car is out of control. If he enters the corner at this speed, he will definitely go off the track or hit the guardrail. The commentator, Mr. X, even made a direct judgment on Qin Guang. Chapter 227. Many years later, there would still be people who would remember this scene with great relish. because this was the first time they had witnessed this godly skill that should not have appeared in the world. The mysterious man wearing the V Special Agent Team mask had pushed the art of car racing to a height that ordinary people simply could not reach. The shadow he had left behind seemed to envelop the entire world of car racing until the end of human civilization. Even if the people who came after him threw their lives away, they still could not touch the slightest trace he had left behind. At first, people thought he was a madman, that this was his accidental mistake, and that he had survived by an even more accidental fluke. But after this accident reappeared again and again, people suddenly realized that this was the godly skill that was called inevitable. But at this moment, these people all held their breath, thinking that the first serious accident in the car racing competition so far was about to happen. So sudden, so tragic, and completely unprepared. Even Lu Fei, who had unparalleled confidence in Qin Guang, still clenched the clothes in front of her chest at this moment, and the valuable alligator skin was scratched deeply by her fingernails. Different from the last time when she ate his dust behind his back, and different from what Zhong Bai and the others had said, this was the first time Lu Fei had truly seen Qin Guang's godly skill so clearly through the camera. Her heart was pounding, and every beat was like the sound of a drum. Perhaps she was worried about Qin Guang, or perhaps she was ecstatic about her luck as a car fan. The commentator, Mr. X, was completely in the zone, roaring like a machine gun. He's turning. He's not slowing down. Familiar drifting method, the steering wheel and the car body are in a tangent state. He's still hitting the accelerator. The front of the car is swinging over. The rear of the car is about to hit. He's speeding up. He's speeding up in the drift process. He's charging over. Oh my God. What the hell am I seeing? How did he do it? What happened? Mr. X, who had commentated at least 100 races, even lost his voice in shock, completely unable to believe his own eyes. He was clearly about to hit, but he was always just that little bit away. He had actually drifted past the turn at a speed of 110 kilometers per hour. Just like that, he had widened the distance between him and the McLaren 675 by more than 50 meters. At this time, the advantage of having a high-speed camera live broadcast was revealed. The director switched the image in time, and the video of the GTR's cornering appeared on the screen at 5 times slower. First, it switched to 4 slow-motion replays, one of which was a high-altitude shot, and the other 3 were arranged at 3 points along the bend to capture the front and side shots. After the first slow-motion replay, they cut back to the bird's-eye view of the sky. The data analysis team's results were quickly presented. Only then did the crowd finally understand what had happened. The rear of Qin Guang's car was about to touch the guardrail, but it was still a little short and there were no sparks. The quick-witted director quickly cut into the data calculated by the computer. A ruler with an enlarged distance mark appeared on the screen, and it followed the movement of Qin Guang's car to always stay at the shortest point. 5 mm. 4 mm. 5 mm. 6 mm. 4 mm. These numbers kept changing and appearing, causing everyone to suck in a breath of cold air. During this high-speed movement, the distance between the rear of the car and the guardrail was always controlled between 4 to 6 millimeters. What terrifying control! Soon, the second set of data analysis came out. Through the analysis of the tire speed, the Matt GTR's power changes and distribution were clearly analyzed at the moment of cornering. In just a few seconds, his power distribution had undergone a total of 9 drastic changes, proving that he was changing gears. On average, he changed gears 3 times every 2 seconds. The power distribution was so perfect that people couldn't look directly at it. The terrifying throttle control and 4-wheel drift. During the drift, the car was always in a state of understeer. The driver in the GTR completely corrected the direction of the car during the high-speed drift through the perfect microcontrol of the car's accelerator, gear, and direction. At every moment, he exerted the engine's horsepower to the extreme to enter the corner at such a high speed. High-speed cornering. There was no loss of speed at all. The superb control of the steering wheel, the unparalleled release of power from the accelerator, and the godlike speed of shift. What kind of terrifying monster was sitting in the car? The scene changed again and finally returned to the live broadcast. At this time, Qin Guang had completely passed through the Z-shaped corner, and he was far ahead of everyone else. Ajie's body went limp, and he slumped to the ground, shaking his head in disbelief. What did I see? What did I see? Lu Fei held onto the Chevrolet SUV beside her, and she could no longer stand steadily. Her face was so red that it was enough to cause blood loss to her brain. Her breathing was as heavy as a bellow, and her full breasts were almost hurting from the violent beating of her heart. The space between her legs seemed to be wet from excitement. See, I told you he's God. The real god of racing. He's not something we called out but a real god. Even Lu Fei, who had been mentally prepared, was in such a state, let alone the others who had seen such a godly skill for the first time. The originally noisy parking lot was silent. Only the lonely frog under the night sky finally got a brief moment of peace, and it hid in the grass next to the parking lot and croaked. These stupid humans, is that glowing thing so beautiful? The ones who were the most shocked were the drivers who had already finished competing or were about to compete. This was even more shocking than Dominic Diesel's sudden appearance. At least the king of racing was still human. His cornering skills were simply not something that could appear in the human world. Are we actually going to compete with such an opponent? Was this a coincidence of his or was it deliberate? In the following corners, Qin Guang did not show this godly skill of not slowing down at all. Just now he had barely used his left hand to change gears at the speed of light. In order to achieve his goal, he had forced his muscle control to be perfect, and now his left hand was a little tired. Forget it, anyway it's good to get first place. Next I'll run more easily and casually. If I scare people no one will come to save the car and I'll lose 3 cars. Then he quietly finished the whole course at an average speed of close to 140 km per hour. On this track with a total length of 18 kilometers, he was 3 kilometers ahead of the McLaren 675 in second place. This made the conceited young man start to doubt his life. When Qin Guang crossed the finish line, whether it was at the parking lot at the finish line, the parking lot at the starting point, or even the 2 parking lots in the middle section, they all cheered in unison. Everyone wanted to see what kind of person was sitting in this matte GTR. However, he did not stop at all and rushed straight forward. In an instant, he was far away along the road at the end of the track, and disappeared into the darkness, leaving only an afterimage. There was an uproar. Chapter 228. In the second group where Qin Guang was, there was no doubt that he would be the champion, while the second place was maintained by the McLaren 675 until the end. The young genius from India, Udall, barely managed to grab the third place after a desperate struggle. The European blonde guy driving the modified Ferrari 599 was lucky to stay in the top 4. The owners of the other 4 cars had to wait for the champion of this round like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. Since they had come to this arena, no matter how unwilling they were, they had to accept this cruel fate. Lu Fei looked at Qin Guang's car on the giant screen and was slightly relieved. She was really afraid that he would be stopped. The person arranged by Uncle Cheng to be in charge of the support at the finish line didn't have to come out for the time being, but in the next round he definitely wouldn't have such good luck, right? Uncle Cheng tomorrow? Lu Fei turned her head and said to Uncle Cheng beside her. Uncle Cheng directly interrupted her. Little Fei, you don't need to say anything, I understand. I will wait for him at the finish line tomorrow. I, Tang Chaoqing, still have some influence in Hong Kong, so it's not a problem to protect him. Previously I thought that if this young man really drove well I could let him be my driver later. Now it seems that I thought too much. I really don't know where you found such a monster. Lu Fei smiled. Even an experienced and knowledgeable big shot like you, Uncle Cheng, was stunned? Uncle Cheng touched his sunglasses. When I was young I also raced for fun. I used to think that I had some ability, but compared with your friend I was simply a snail. Sister Lu Fei. Oh my god. This is really a god. God. Jia roared crazily, jumped up and wanted to pounce in front of Lu Fei, but before he could get close he was decisively punched in the forehead by Lu Fei and sent flying. No wonder he was so excited. Jia was obsessed with modifying cars, so of course he was also very interested in racing. Although Qin Guang didn't easily show his magic skills later on, the 2 numbers clearly written on the giant screen still made him excited to the point of going crazy. Time? 7 minutes 44 seconds. Average speed? 139. 54 kilometers per hour. He had broken the record of 133. 94 kilometers per hour that Diesel had set in the 7th round 4 years ago. So casually, the birth of a new record was so sudden, appearing in front of the world without any warning. This was only the first round. Unlike others, Jia knew what this meant. That man just arrived in Xiangjiang this afternoon. Today was the first time he used this car to participate in a race, and it was also the first time he drove the car onto this racetrack. He didn't even use the NOS system. This meant that this was far from his limit. He could still continue to raise his score. As the others passed the finish line one after another, the giant screen finally displayed the final results of all the racers in their group. Next to it was Diesel's record, which he had maintained for 4 years. In the loudspeaker next to the square, the commentator Mr. X roared at the top of his lungs, "A new record!" Tommy Diesel had maintained this record for 4 whole years. It was broken. This was only the first round. What a terrifying GTR. What a terrifying racer. Mr. X's almost roaring tone also stirred up the emotions of the other spectators. Many racer fans let out excited roars, excited to witness the birth of a new record with their own eyes. Even some women who weren't originally racing girls opened up their thin jackets, revealing their underwear or a pair of vacuum pants. It seemed that if they didn't open up their chests like this, they would be so excited that they would have difficulty breathing. Ajia once again moved in front of Lu Fei, but this time he learned his lesson. He didn't dare to foolishly try to move closer, afraid of being beaten up again. He just said with a flushed face, "Sister Lu Fei, when Brother Racing God comes back, help me ask him if I can be his disciple? Even if I only learn 30% of his skills, I'm afraid I'll still be invincible in Xiangjiang." Lu Fei had completely calmed down at this time. Her heartbeat also gradually stabilized. After all, this situation was already within her expectations. Even strictly speaking, Qin Guang's performance today wasn't even as good as the first time he drove Zhong Bai's Ferrari FF at Mount Fengquan. After all, the performance of this magically modified GTR was far better than Zhong Bai's Ferrari FF, and the average speed today was only 139.54. One must know that the average speed he drove that day at Mount Fengquan with Wang Qing's other GTR was 150. This was just the beginning of a legend. Ajia, don't be so excited here. He just swore 2 days ago that he would never teach people to race again. Otherwise, why do you think Wang Qing is lying in bed, and why is he here instead of Wang Qing? Also, let me tell you a secret. The standard he drove today was really not even a third of his normal level. This is the first time in his life that he drove a car with a right steering wheel. What? Lu Fei said it lightly, but Ajia was completely dumbfounded, thinking that there was something wrong with his ears. When the shock exceeded a certain level, it could actually make people calm down in an instant. This was Ajia's current state. He finally understood why Lu Fei always liked to look at the people around her like they were idiots. What are you guys so happy about? He wasn't in shape at all today. Everyone else used to drive the left steering wheel in the mainland. Today was the first time he drove the right, the first time he ran this track. He's going crazy. This opponent is ridiculously strong. He reminds me of Diesel from 4 years ago. Not far from Ajia, a tall man wrapped tightly in a racing uniform said coldly. His brows were tightly furrowed. It was obvious that Qin Guang's performance had put a lot of pressure on the other contestants. It's not that scary. Although this person has some ability, he may not be on par with Diesel. Are you blind? You don't know the numbers on the scoreboard? 4 years ago, Diesel drove a modified version of the old Ford GT. Although it also had 800 horsepower, how much technology has been improved in these 4 years? Not to mention the new supercharger technology, whether it's the new suspension, the updated tire technology, or the brand new supermodel body stability system. Did it exist 4 years ago? Now it's fully promoted carbon fiber ultralight body. 4 years ago, this technology wasn't even mature yet. How much convenience can these things bring in cornering? Don't you think I'm not clear? That's true, but you can't deny that this GTR is very strong. It's strong, but I don't agree with you comparing it to Diesel. Also, it also has 800 horsepower. 4 years ago, the turbocharger showed signs of slowing down after a long period of high-load operation, but now? This GTR is equipped with the 6.2 V12 engine that Mercedes-Benz introduced half a year ago. Whether it's the stability of the power output or the endurance, it's on a completely different level from the V8 4 years ago. If Diesel were to run the half-hill track again, do you think 133.94 would still be his limit? That's true. 4 years ago we thought Diesel was unreachable. But last year's champion, Yuan, easily reached an average speed of 133.76. It had to be said that what this person said was somewhat reasonable. His loud argument not only reached Lu Fei's ears, but also attracted the attention of many other racers. Yes. No matter what, this year's car racing competition will definitely be more exciting than the past 3 years. What a splendid start. They hadn't even raced yet, so no one was willing to admit defeat so easily. They were worshipping the former Diesel, but at the same time, they were encouraging themselves. Listening to these people's self-righteous discussions, Ajia had no intention of arguing with them. This feeling of being the only one sober while everyone else was drunk was really great. Chapter 229. On the other side, the third group of racers had already entered the track and were ready to set off. Lu Fei looked at it and felt bored. At that moment her phone rang. She picked it up and saw that it was indeed Qin Guang. I've already met up with the people in front. I asked them to drive the car back to the modification factory. I'm coming back in an off-road vehicle. Did you help me choose a car? Remember, it must be the most expensive. Master Guang was very straightforward, unlike other car lovers who might be picky when choosing a car, trying to see which car was rarer, and which car's modification method was more suitable for their taste. Qin Guang only had one standard, not the best but the most expensive. Of course, the better the performance of a sports car, the more expensive it would be. For example, a normal GTR only sold for 1.7 to 2.4 million, but its performance was much better than a Bentley Continental, which cost more than 6 million. Lamborghini cars were also famous for being pretty but useless. Lu Fei rolled her eyes in exasperation. You'll have to wait until the first round of the competition is over before heading to the terminal together. What's the rush? I've already picked one for you. It's the Aston Martin V8 Fantasy South Coupe in 7th place. It's almost 3 million and has some collectible value. It's not even 007 James Bond's DB10. What the hell are you talking about? Boring. At this moment, Qin Guang was unhappy. Why didn't anyone drive a 918 like Lu Fei? DB10? I have faith in you. Limited to 10 units worldwide. You can't buy it even if you have the money. It was auctioned in February last year for £1.6 million. Do you know how much money you have? Sigh, how I wish you could participate. I think your Porsche 918 Spyder is pretty good. *CK. This guy is actually thinking of me. Lu Fei felt that she had run out of energy to complain. She really didn't want to waste time on this topic, so she changed her tune. Alright. That's all for the car selection. The cars later on will be more and more valuable. I say, what's wrong with you? In the first round, you ran an average speed of nearly 140 kilometers per hour, 3 kilometers ahead of the second place. Are you afraid that people won't know you're going against the natural order? Was it because you were afraid that the 10 great car kings wouldn't be able to set off, so you reminded them earlier that they should set off? Qin Guang's surprised voice came from the phone. Ale? I really didn't use my full strength. I was just running blindly. I'm holding back. Jie, who had been eavesdropping on Lu Fei and Qin Guang's conversation, couldn't help but say, keep your sister. Save your sister. Almost at the same time as Jie, Lu Fei cursed. Damn it. Before yesterday, the highest speed on the track was 133.9. You raised it by almost 6 yards the moment you arrived. I don't want to talk nonsense with you anymore. Hurry up and come over, I want to strangle you to death. It's also my fault for not discussing tactics with you in advance. Since you're ahead in strength, you can't just run like this from the start. This is going to be a little troublesome. On the other side of the phone, Qin Guang felt wronged. Really? I didn't use my full strength? I probably didn't even use 20% of it. You see, my speed dropped a lot when I turned the corner. After all, the second wife is still not as good as the first wife. After changing gears too many times, my muscles are a little sore. Mistress? Left hand. It was a slip of the tongue. Sigh. Qin Guang, on the other hand, comforted Lu Fei. Forget it. Anyway, it's already like this. We'll just deal with it when it comes. I didn't expect myself to be so awesome. I can't blame the old man for being too fierce. I can only blame the opponents for being too weak. The strongest opponent in my group is only about the same level as Wang Qing. How can you blame me? I'm not familiar with the track yet. It's my first time running and I didn't dare to really speed up in many places. Let me put it this way. I'm already at the level of a world champion in sprinting. If you want me to race with a tortoise, I have to control my speed to be as slow as a tortoise. Isn't that difficult? Enough. Don't act tough anymore. The situation is already out of control. I'm going to call the police. Hurry up and come over. Lu Fei hung up the phone and turned her head to look around. Looking at the racers who were still excited, she thought to herself, if they knew that Qin Guang had so casually compared them to tortoises, would they want to chop me up? By the time Qin Guang came back in the off-road vehicle, the first round of the competition had already progressed to the 5th group. Perhaps it was because of his stimulation, or perhaps it was because of the explosive technological innovation by the major R&D companies at the end of last year that had truly brought the level of supercars into a new era. Stronger tires provided stronger grip, a stronger engine provided more power, a better suspension made the car more stable when cornering, and a more advanced onboard system made the car more stable when cornering at high speeds. New technology brought a new era, and this year's competition was completely different from previous years. In the next two groups, the records left by Diesel 4 years ago were broken one after another. Even the McLaren P1, which had the most outstanding performance, had also run above 139. It was very close to the level of 139.48. As Diesel's records were broken again and again, the racers began to raise their arms and shout, cheering for the arrival of a new era for racing. Only Lu Fei understood that the birth of God would, in the end, be over the bodies of countless talented mortals. Under God's throne, corpses would inevitably be strewn everywhere. Without more geniuses falling under God's blood-drinker sword, how could God's glory be revealed? Pitiful mortals. However, Qin Guang had run such a result in the first round. If everything went as expected, starting tomorrow the true masters from all over the world would set off. The further it went, the more dazzling Qin Guang's light became, especially after entering the battle to protect the car. The other 7 cars on the same stage would all become his enemies. At that time, his opponents would all be truly top-notch, and he would be the enemy of the entire world. Only then would his situation become truly dangerous. Forget it, if I don't break through the sky in the brilliant light, then I'll burn in the flames of hell. Apart from having unparalleled skills, every true racing king's greatest strength was precisely this kind of unstoppable momentum. Qin Guang didn't get out of the car, and even Lu Fei directly got in and sat with him in the back. I just asked Uncle Qing to find someone to make a soft mask for you, and it will be sent over later tonight. In fact, I don't understand why you're so cautious. I don't think it's necessary. Qin Guang shrugged. You think it's easy? But for me this is like winning the lottery. It's already good enough that I'm not wrapped in a few Think about it, I'm going to take away so many people's cars. Some people may be willing to admit defeat, but there must be people who are jealous and hate me. I'm not like you big shots in Wujing City. What if one day I get kidnapped while walking on the road? The two of them chatted for a long time. After watching Qin Guang's competition, the racing that could make anyone's blood boil had become dull. It was so much so that Lu Fei couldn't even be bothered to stretch her head out to look at the screen. Finally, when the first round of 8 races was over, no one could break the record set by Qin Guang today. But what Qin Guang was most looking forward to was the next part. It was time to take the money and lock the car. The old man was going to make a fortune. Chapter 230. On the way back to the hotel, Qin Guang's face was full of displeasure. During the process of locking the car and taking the money, he hid in the car and secretly looked at it. Lu Fei and Uncle Qing stood up for him and helped him get 1 million yuan in cash, which was locked in the box beside his hand. The Aston Martin V8 Castle S Coupe, which was targeted by Lu Fei, was also locked in the underground garage of the half-mountain racetrack. Before the dust of the car gambling competition settled, no one could touch it. The guy who locked the car seemed to be a real nouveau riche. From beginning to end, he did not show the slightest displeasure and kept surrounding Lu Fei. It was not that he wanted to hit on Lu Fei, but he wanted to hit on Qin Guang, who was standing behind Lu Fei. It was not only this guy. From getting out of the car, getting the money, locking the car, and returning to the off-road vehicle, there were at least hundreds of people trying to hit on her. If it weren't for the protection of Uncle Qing, Lu Fei would almost not have been able to leave. Many locals in Hong Kong recognized Uncle Qing, and those who were not from other places knew that he was a big shot who could not be offended after being pointed out by the locals. Even so, she was exhausted and sweating. If I knew it would be so troublesome, I should have asked you for a commission. After getting in the car, Lu Fei complained to Qin Guang while trying hard to tidy up her almost torn leather coat. Little Fei, don't say that. I just saw that you enjoyed the feeling of being surrounded by stars. Uncle Qing, who was sitting in the front row, made a joke. This was the first time that Qin Guang heard him speak. He almost thought that he was mute. He thought that this uncle's voice was really strange. It was like scraping a knife on the table and his ears were sore. Seeing Qin Guang's surprised face, Lu Fei explained, Uncle Qing fought in a war before, and his throat was scratched by a bullet on the battlefield. Damn. He didn't die even after being shot in the throat. This world is really full of crouching tigers and hidden dragons. Fortunately, I have been low-key. Qin Guang's eyelids twitched. He had long felt that this uncle was powerful, and it turned out to be so. Uncle Qing just smiled and didn't say anything. He waved his hand and signaled for the convoy to set off. Although many people wanted to stop him, no one dared to offend Uncle Qing. The organizer of the previous competition also came up to Uncle Cheng and chatted with him for a while. In the end, he smiled bitterly and shook his head before leaving. He even promised to escort the GTR for the next few days. It was Uncle Cheng who pretended to understand. "I'll have to trouble you for the next 7 days." This sentence stunned the organizer for a long time. 7 days? Now you say 7 days? If you weren't Tang Chowching, I would have slapped your face. It's not that I want to say this, but the prize money for this car racing competition is too low. He brought a car worth millions to participate in the competition, but he only got 1 million if he won, Qin Guang said as he stroked the lockbox in front of him with a face full of regret. Of course, even though he said so, he was still happy when he thought about the million in cash. Lu Fei looked at him in annoyance. "You've already taken advantage of me and you're still pretending to be innocent. This is only the first round and you got 1 million for nothing. What else do you want? After the second round tomorrow, you'll get another 1,500,000. You didn't pay for the car either. There's no such thing as a business without capital in this world." "But it's still too little." Qin Guang was still a little indignant. "It doesn't matter to me. Are those people who came to participate in the competition stupid? The input and output are not proportional at all." Lu Fei covered her face in pain. She only felt that it was too embarrassing. "Only you are so practical. It's all for the money. Others are after excitement and fame. Besides, who would want to lose in the first round? Won't the next few rounds accumulate? What if you get first place? Can't you still pick other people's cars? What if you become the king of cars? There are so many conceited people in this world. Just because you're good, you don't allow others to have dreams?" Qin Guang nodded. "That's true. Even a dabbler like Wang Qing dared to use a car worth 10 million to enter. There are quite a lot of fools. This GTR feels much better to drive than his last car." Lu Fei was already speechless. She actually felt that what he said made sense. On the other side, Qin Guang and Lu Fei stayed in the hotel in Simsha Sui and left. They didn't care that the matte GTR had completely exploded outside. The appearance of a speed of 139.54 officially opened the prelude to this year's car racing competition, which was different from the previous 3 years. Although there were some people who ran very close to this level later, they were still a little worse than him. Because of Uncle Cheng, many people couldn't find out Qin Guang's identity in person. But when the first round of the competition ended and the crowd gradually dispersed, the hidden undercurrents gradually surged in the dark. Snowflakes of information flew from Xiangjiang to all parts of the world through email, WeChat, QQ, MSN or other channels. Diesel's record had finally been broken. And under the leadership of this person, a total of 13 cars broke Diesel's record in the first round of the Xiangjiang car racing competition. Just this piece of news instantly rendered a different halo to the Xiangjiang car gambling competition, whose status was gradually declining in the international arena. The matte GTR came from Jie's modification factory. This matter wasn't hidden for long. Soon, someone found Jie overnight and tried to find out the driver's information from Jie. However, Jie didn't know Qin Guang's real name at all. As for his identity, he didn't know anything. But the people who came to inquire about the news had powerful backgrounds, and he couldn't not say anything. After thinking hard, Jie barely made up such a person. It was a young man with an extremely mysterious identity. He came from the mainland and was escorted by the daughter of a big shot in the mainland's Sichuan province. He was also escorted by Xiangjiang's local big shot, Uncle Cheng. He was very young, handsome, domineering, quiet and low-key. Other than that, there was nothing else that could be said. As for the identity of the original owner of the GTR, it wasn't difficult to find out. Wang Qing, the son of Wang Guxiong, the boss of the Wujing city's Dingshan gang. Wang Qing was now lying in the hospital, so this driver was definitely not him. Anyone who knew a little about the industry had already vaguely guessed this person's identity. It was indeed impossible to easily find out. Whether it was the daughter of the Lu family, Tang Chowching, or Wang Guxiong's son, any of these three people were not people who could be easily offended. A person who could make these three forces either send cars, people, or escort them didn't care about the outside world's reputation at all. This was a mysterious person who only wanted to hide in the dark, but he was overflowing with talent and unparalleled. He was only here to enjoy his own racing journey. Because of Uncle Cheng, Jie wasn't put in a difficult position. After bragging about the identity he had made up again and again, he finally ended this busy day. Some people chose to believe what Jie said, some only believed part of it and some didn't believe it at all. They only thought that the person was a top driver found by Lu Fei or Wang Qing. That was all. But no matter what, since the other party didn't want to reveal his identity, there wouldn't be any results unless he took the initiative to ask. At the same time, in an underground modification factory in Los Angeles, such a conversation was taking place. Diesel, your record in Xiangjiang has been broken. Some people say that you're outdated. Really? Interesting. In a small house beside a mountain road in Bangkok, Thailand, a young man so handsome that he didn't look like a man suddenly stood up from his chair, stretched and dialed a number. Ayuan, the CTR I left at your house is about to rust, right? Help me take it out to dry. I Wu Pan Junyao want to come to Xiangjiang. Deep in the Brazilian rainforest, it was noon and the sun was blazing in the sky. A man sat on a motorcycle. Speed, you're already 33 years old. Don't go okay? No. 33 years old just right. When I come back, we'll buy the farm opposite. In a car factory in Detroit. Dad, let me go. You're the Sonic Shaker. The birth of a new car king must be approved by the Shaker family. Although you're old now, I'm your son. All right, Ferrant, do you like that car? The 19-year-old Fronte pointed his finger at the ferocious beast hiding in the corner. A terrifying monster with 1,200 horsepower. London, England. Racing is a sport for gentlemen. Let me, Ferdinand, go and tell the Wuxia people that Xiangjiang is still ruled by the British Empire. At least in the racing field. Jenny, I want to go to Xiangjiang with my Aston Martin Zagato. Beside the Great Rift Valley in Africa. Felix, are you going out to race again? Yes, I have to win back a sum of money. Otherwise, the chief will sell the newly discovered coal mine to the Wuxia people. I'll go to the Wuxia people's territory, win back money from them, and then buy back our coal mine from them. Not only that, more and more people with black skin, white skin, yellow skin and brown skin, set off from all over the world one after another. At this moment, in the eyes of the global underground racing world, Xiangjiang had turned into a black hole, or rather, a sun. One after another, extremely dazzling rays of light from all directions of the earth suddenly connected to the sky above Xiangjiang. The banquet of the global racing world began on this night. At this moment, the true God who was about to ascend to the altar was sleeping soundly on the hotel bed, his saliva wet the pillow without him knowing. Chapter 231. Unlike Qin Guang, who was sleeping soundly, Lu Fei, who was lying in the room next to him in the suite, was tossing and turning on the bed. When the hustle and bustle quieted down for a short while, her mind was turning over and over again, but the moment when Qin Guang showed his magic skill at the Z-curve. At a slower speed than in the giant screen at that time, she kept replaying it in slow motion. She felt that her heart was beating faster than a bird's. In the dead of night, her heartbeat sounded so ear-piercing, as if someone was really playing drums beside her. She couldn't stop trembling, and between her legs there was a wet. She suddenly decided to drop all the things at hand and come to Hong Kong. After arriving here, she was busy for a whole day. Of course, it was impossible to say that she was not tired. Lu Fei was also very tired, but she just couldn't sleep. She was also secretly proud in her heart. This group of people will not race in the future, but Zhong Bai and the others are not like me. They have no chance to be there in person and witness the racing god show his magic skill. Those who didn't truly understand cars, or those who loved cars, wouldn't be able to understand that the moment he turned the corner, he would be so excited that his hair would stand on end. Moreover, the person who displayed this godly skill was his friend, perhaps even half a master. This feeling is like the hardcore fans of the Brazilian team seeing Fat Luo break through Kahn's defense in the World Cup final. It is also like the hardcore Comey staying in front of the TV, watching Kobe Bryant shoot the buzzer-beating three-point shot in the tiebreaker of the NBA Finals. Even if he can't find like-minded people to share his happy and excited feelings, it is enough to close the door and cover himself in a cup to laugh. Of course, Lu Fei also knows what Qin Guang's so-called blind race means today. Those people must be on the way, right? The peerless master who was once unattainable and could only look up to now has to compete with her master on the same stage, and it is very likely that he will be ruthlessly trampled under his feet. This kind of expectation really can't be expressed in thousands of words. In the southeast province thousands of kilometers away, Tang Ying, tired but excited, is carefully pushing a wheelchair, slowly boarding the train to Wujing. Sitting in the wheelchair is a tired middle-aged woman. The expression on the woman's face looked a little ashamed, but more excited and agitated. Behind Tang Ying, Zhong Bai, with dark circles under his eyes, was accompanied by 3 bodyguards dressed in black. Behind the bodyguard were several men and women with complicated expressions. They were the woman's family. A little further away, A pale-faced middle-aged man was looking in this direction with a face full of despair. "Dad, let's wait a little longer. This auntie's kidney isn't the best match for you. We've already gone too far. Let's leave it at that." The middle-aged man's entire body shook. He turned around dejectedly and vanished into the darkness, leaving behind only endless loneliness. Qin Guang woke up early and felt refreshed. It had been a busy day yesterday. After getting off the plane, he went racing without any rest. When he returned to the hotel, it was already past 10 o'clock. He was slightly tired. Of course, the happiest thing was that he completely gave up on the rest of the final exams. He didn't have to read anymore and decisively went to bed to sleep soundly. As for the makeup test? What did you say? The wind is too strong for me to hear. There was only one problem that was a little awkward. He was overly excited during the race, which caused a little side effect. It wasn't too serious. It was just that he didn't bring a change of underwear. What was more annoying was that he didn't know if there were people outside trying to find out his identity. Qin Guang couldn't go out easily. He had to spend the next few days in this hotel suite. Oh my god, this suite looked like it would cost a lot of money. There were many kinds of fitness equipment in the corner of the large living room. What was even better was that there were 4 computers in the room. When he came back last night, Qin Guang had already checked it. It was an i7 CPU and a Titan graphics card. The air of a tycoon hit him in the face. It couldn't be more fun to play Dota with it. Walking out of the room, he took out a cup from his bag and grabbed a handful of Longjing tea leaves from the dozen or so types of tea provided by the hotel. He brewed the tea and sat on the rocking chair by the windowsill to bask in the rising sun. Feeling the warm morning sun, he was extremely satisfied. When the tea cooled down a little, she took a sip and waited for the waiter to bring her breakfast. Damn, the life of a rich person is simply too awesome. I can't ask Lu Fei how much money she needs for a day. What if she asks me to return the money? I'll just pretend that I don't know anything. When is this woman going to wake up? What should I say to make her take the initiative to buy new underwear for me? The old man is going to become rich soon. He can only wear branded underwear like Sans Ho, right? After thinking about it and finishing the cup of tea, old man Guang still couldn't think of a reasonable plan to trick her. Forget it, I won't think about it anymore. Anyway, I'm thick-skinned. I'll just say it. A teacher for a day is a father for life. The old man had taught her once back then. There should still be a bit of a teacher-student relationship, right? With that thought, Lu Fei finally got out of bed. She had 2 panda eyes. It was obvious that she hadn't slept the entire night. Coincidentally, the waiter delivered breakfast at this moment. Lu Fei took the breakfast in a daze and ran straight to the bathroom in a daze, as though she hadn't seen Qin Guang at all. Just like that, Qin Guang sat by the window and looked at her wriggling on the floor like a zombie with black lines on his forehead. When the woman started taking off her clothes without closing the bathroom door, Qin Guang finally reacted. "Chance. What? You said I was peeping? How could I do such a thing? I was just looking at my phone." Quietly hiding beside the bathroom door, Qin Guang didn't dare to poke his head out. Being quick-witted, he decisively turned on the camera and poked it out. My Popcorn 6S comes with a flipping camera function. How considerate. Qin Guang swallowed his saliva and chuckled as he looked at the screen. Lu Fei had just taken off her little pig on a sunny day pajamas, revealing her smooth, mirror-like back. Stuff. As expected, one shouldn't wear underwear when sleeping. Then, without turning back, she casually closed the bathroom door. GG Smita. After waiting for a long time, when she finally came out, Qin Guang was already sitting at the dining table, picking his teeth as though nothing had happened. They even delivered steak for breakfast. How luxurious. It's completely different from my impression of hotels. Lu Fei didn't know what had happened. She used a towel to dry her wet hair and walked over to sit on the dining table. After taking a shower, she seemed to be in a better state of mind. However, the movement of her head to the side and raising her hand caused the collar of her pajamas to fold up a little. Qin Guang's gaze went straight inside. Lu Fei pulled up her pajamas and glared at him. With my net worth, it's $1 million just to take a look. Qin Guang chuckled and quickly turned his head away. He took another sip of water and pretended to be an expert. It's so expensive. If I take a few more glances, I won't be able to pay off my debt for the rest of my life. When she finally finished eating, Qin Guang's expression changed. Lu Fei, I have an honorable and difficult task to entrust to you. Lu Fei was shocked and put down the glass of milk in her hand. What is it? Please tell me. Help me buy 3 pairs of 3-gun underwear. There was a small accident last night. Chapter 232. Lu Fei sucked in a breath of cold air and glared at him for about 10 seconds before she finally came back to her senses. Yesterday you were so handsome that my face was covered in blood. Even now, when I look at you, my face is still red and my heart can't control itself. Tonight, I was going to give you more benefits. In the end? Now, I'm still unable to extricate myself from your handsomeness last night, but you suddenly turned into a shameless clown. How could I acknowledge someone like you as my master? How could I be infatuated with such a man? Am I blind or what? I can't get used to your sudden change in style. Can't I? What should I do? This is a bit troublesome. You can't blame me. In that situation yesterday, I was just an innocent virgin and couldn't control myself at all. Hey, if I put it like this, can you understand my feelings at that time? Qin Guang had a headache and his face was full of distress. Lu Fei glanced at him impatiently and couldn't say a word for a long time. You drew a map last night, right? Although this shows that I'm very charming and it's something to be proud of. But doesn't this also mean that I've fallen into a trap of my own making? I purposely seduced him and got the map and then I have to buy underwear for him? To think that I, the dignified Lu Fei, the eldest daughter of the Dechuan Lu family, actually fell into the situation of buying underwear for someone with 3 shots. Just thinking about it makes me feel awkward. What should this old lady do? Forget it, I'll pay back the debts I owe from my previous life. You're still pretending to be innocent after getting a bargain. Luckily I've seen through you. Alright, I'll buy it for you. She chose to admit defeat. Qin Guang happily squeezed her hand. Thank you. You're really a good person. Damn. I've been given a good person card just like that. When Lu Fei stood in front of the men's luxury goods store with a veil covering her face, her mind was still in a daze. She really couldn't find the underwear that Qin Guang had specifically asked for. She had been walking around the Prince building for more than 2 hours, and her legs were about to turn to jelly. She really wanted to call Qin Guang and scold him. Can you not be so picky? You can just buy any brand of underwear. Why did it have to be 3 shots? But in the end she did not do so. Since she had already accepted the good guy card, it would be hard for her not to fulfill his request. Lu Fei didn't expect that she was trying to fish from a tree. What kind of place was the prince's building? It was full of luxury stores. A popular brand like 3 Guns would not be able to enter at all. At that moment, Qin Guang, who was sitting on the computer and locked in a fierce battle with Jiang Liuxiu, was completely unaware of Lu Fei's dilemma and embarrassment. That was because this strange opponent, who refused to add him as a friend no matter what, had come again. Since the glorious yet arduous mission had been entrusted to Lu Fei, old Master Guang expressed that he wouldn't doubt the person he used and wouldn't use the person he doubted. Instead, he would allow me to have a good fight with this destined enemy of mine for 300 rounds. Qin Guang didn't notice that the number of spectators in the battle between the two had already shot up to 5,000. The reason was very simple. This ID, Jiang Liuxiu, was already firmly at the top of the national server. His celestial ladder points as high as 8,800 were simply unbearable. He was only 1,200 points away from the Tieba Almighty's 10,000 points. Still, this wasn't the weirdest thing. This ID, which had recently been on the top of all the major video highlights, the terrifying number 1 on the national server, had actually been matched into a match with less than 4,000 points. This strange phenomenon caused the originally widely criticized Dota 2 match system to be once again bombarded with criticism. Of course, it also attracted a lot of attention to this match, which was destined to be a massacre of noobs. A lot of people wanted to know how this number 1 on the national server, who had recently not only abused noobs, but also professional players, would torture this group of kids with less than 4,000 points. It wasn't until the details of Qin Guang's ID, which had been wittily renamed to Master Guang, was dug up and once again flooded the Dota 2 channel that a lot of people were suddenly enlightened. Many people suddenly remembered that this was the mysterious player who had also caused a stir in Tieba and the forums more than a month ago. His enigmatic and cheap cat, and even the few matches where he had switched to the later stages of the game, were equally dazzling and convincing. However, this brother seemed to be very lazy and didn't really rush for points. He had also been sanctioned by Jiang Liuxiu some time ago, so his popularity had dropped slightly recently. These two were matched together again? Had they crossed the 4,000 point gap? What was originally a massacre of noobs had suddenly turned into a pinnacle showdown between 2 top experts and a group of noobs. Normal Dota was supposed to be a game for 5 people. Were these two going to forcibly turn the game into a 1v1? For such a strange match to appear, these two were destined to be enemies. Or was it that the automatic match system was witty enough to forcibly create a pinnacle situation? ignoring the difference in celestial ladder points? And deliberately creating a situation where each of them was fighting 1 against 4? All sorts of factors had silently pushed this originally ordinary celestial ladder competition to the pinnacle. The number of spectators quickly exceeded 5,000, and it continued to rise. Chen Guang was playing the Blackbird mid laner, who had recently become very popular in the national server. Opposite him, Wuxia had pulled out Carl, the man who claimed to have 10 skills. The two decisively fought back and forth, competing with each other. Chen Guang was gnashing his teeth in anger. "I'm going to fix you." What he didn't notice was that the CPU usage of this super-configured computer was 50% higher than normal. It felt like he was playing Dota 2 at the same time. Meanwhile, in the Tongtian Holy Grail's world in the cup, Lioli was sitting naked in front of a virtual computer, desperately typing away with a wretched smile on her face. The general picture was basically no different from the back view of a goddess playing a game naked that was widely circulated on the internet. Someone wanted to see the front? Sorry, it was all a vast expanse of white fog. Small fry. Wanna fix me? Dream on. VS is coming over in the fog? Wanna catch me? It's about to reach 6. Wanna rush over to trade health with me and smash big? Top lane is an invisibility talisman. Want a control talisman? VS is coming to ambush me again? Ready to cross the tower to kill me? Lioli's nagging caused Lord Guang to directly collapse. He had lost unjustly and died with everlasting regret. Of course, Lioli knew his every move like the back of her hand and predicted the enemy's moves. Because what Chen Guang had to face was basically a roundworm in his stomach. As long as Lioli wanted to, she could directly see through Chen Guang's thoughts through the Tongtian Holy Grail. This was simply more OP than opening a map. Of course, she didn't usually have such a bad taste, but as long as she faced Chen Guang in the game, she couldn't help but become unscrupulous. Well, as long as I can play happily, it's not like I'm cheating. It's completely reasonable. Casually pushing her staff to predict and dodge Chen Guang's big move, Lioli shrugged. On the other side, Lu Fei finally broke down. She wouldn't look for the 3 shots even if she was beaten to death. Instead, she stood in front of the CK store and fiercely tore off her veil. Forget it, why the hell would she buy 3 shots? 3 shots were underwear, but CK wasn't underwear? Forget it, she'd better tell him first. Lu Fei dialed Chen Guang's number. Chen Guang, who was immersed in the grief of Jiang Luyao dodging his big move and then counterattacking with his dying blood, answered the call with an expression of eating sh*t. Huh? No 3 shots? How can this be called a shopping paradise? How shameful. What did you say? CK. What a strange English name. Where did this random brand come from? Forget it, help me buy one. I'm going to be rich soon, so I'll throw one away after wearing it. I'm too lazy to wash it. Alright, I want a 4-cornered one. With that, Chen Guang hung up the phone with a snap. He was about to be resurrected. Lu Fei stared blankly at her phone. The busy tone kept beeping and the veins on her forehead bulged. You said CK is a random brand. Chapter 233. 2 years ago, when Tianzhao was racing on the mountain track, Lu Fei was just a little girl standing on the sidelines cheering. However, because of her outstanding appearance and the 10 bodyguards sent by Uncle Cheng to stand beside her, her identity seemed to be far more noble and unique than the average audience. At that time, Tianzhao was shocked by Lu Fei, a fan he met for the first time. With the power of winning the championship, he launched a fierce emotional attack on Lu Fei, who stayed in Xiangjiang for a short time. However, although his driving skills were good, Lu Fei could not rise to feelings for him because of his driving skills. He thought that he was great because he could win the championship, but he never thought that he was just an ordinary person after all. Of course, in view of Lu Fei's powerful background, Tianzhao could only pretend to be free and easy at that time, saying that she was still young, he would wait for her and so on. Lu Fei only thought that he was a joke, and her mood at that time was also very simple. I like racing and I also like to watch others race, but it doesn't mean that I have to throw myself into your arms just because you are good at racing. If you're thirsty, why don't you go look for those racing girls? What status do I have that a mere racing family dares to have thoughts about me? Of course, later facts proved that it was not that his driving skills could not move her, it was purely that Tianzhao's driving skills were not godly enough. Like Chen Guang, he did not even say a few words to Lu Fei from the beginning, let alone take the initiative to hook up with her. As a result, when she looked at Chen Guang, her eyes were full of stars, there was no need to seduce him. Tianzhao, on the other hand, was completely unlucky. he thought that he would never have the chance to meet Lu Fei again. After all, although he was known as the top racer in Xiangjiang, compared with Lu Fei's rich family, he was still not on the same level. But he never expected that after 2 years, Lu Fei would come to Xiangjiang again. Not only that, she actually became the spokesperson of a certain racer. This racer directly ran the strongest result of 139.54 yesterday. Yesterday, He Tianzhao was also one of the people who went to find Lu Fei to inquire about the news, but he was also stopped by Uncle Cheng. In fact, He Tianzhao had performed quite well yesterday, driving his modified Dodge Viper to an average speed of more than 137 km per hour. He was also one of the people who had broken Diesel's record. Last night he had thought that he still had a chance. He had thought that the mysterious racer might just be a racer hired by Lu Fei. Until today, when he saw Lu Fei buy men's underwear in the CK store, and a dozen at once, he felt that something was wrong. He Tianzhao? Lu Fei froze for a moment before she hurriedly picked up the CK underwear that she had carelessly thrown on the cashier counter. She looked a little embarrassed. Although he didn't have any thoughts about this person, he was at least acquainted with him. He was a little embarrassed that he had seen him buying so many men's underwear. He Tianzhao looked at Lu Fei's actions and his heart almost broke. Is this for that racer? Lu Fei subconsciously wanted to say no, but she immediately realized that the underwear scattered all over the table was obviously worn by a young man. If she didn't push it on Qin Guang's head, who should she push it on? Make up another man for yourself? Would others believe it? Useful? Why should I be afraid of He Tianzhao? She might as well go along with what he was thinking. It would also save her the trouble of this insensible guy coming over these few days. What if Qin Guang thought that she had an old lover in Xiangjiang? She simply stopped panicking and shrugged indifferently. Yes, my husband doesn't like to wash it and I'm too lazy to wash it. I'll buy more at once. He Tianzhao's pupils shrank. His heart felt as if it had been whipped, and he felt even more unwilling. This was a woman with a huge amount of money. When I won the championship, you didn't even spare a glance at me. But now you're still with a racer. What? Looks like he's your sugar daddy? Based on what? He tried hard to suppress his jealousy and anger, but in the end he couldn't. Why? Lu Fei rolled her eyes. What? You're so strange. Who are you? Do we know each other well? Do I need to ask for your permission to do anything? Although Lu Fei was usually very shy and easy to talk to in front of Qin Guang, if others dared to provoke her, she would have such a temper. With her temper, she might be considered quite good among the ladies, not to mention that she was originally a rebellious racing girl. I don't accept this. He Tianzhao was ridiculed by Lu Fei in public, but he didn't dare to really get mad at her. The bodyguards sent by Uncle Cheng were already eyeing him from behind. He could only flush with anger, but there was nothing he could do. Lu Fei took her card and underwear pockets from the cashier and turned to leave. It's none of my business whether you accept it or not. I also participated in the race yesterday. I also finished 137. He Tianzhao followed behind Lu Fei and didn't buy anything. Lu Fei didn't want to pay attention to him at all. She still walked quickly with her long legs, only feeling that there was a big fly following behind her. He Tianzhao's angry voice came from far behind. Tonight I'm in the same group as your Jitar. I didn't even go all out yesterday. His 139 is nothing at all. I'll make you understand. Who's the real powerful racer? I'll teach him a lesson. Listening to this person's slightly crazy tone, Lu Fei suddenly turned around, but He Tianzhao had already disappeared. Obviously, after He Tianzhao said those harsh words, he turned around and left. Lu Fei frowned slightly. She just remembered that before He Tianzhao became a racer, he was just a small henchman who fought and killed on the streets of Xiangjiang all day long. He was a fierce person. After becoming a racer, his status became higher, but his temper didn't change. Instead, he became even more arrogant and would do anything to achieve his goals. Because of Uncle Cheng, he really didn't dare to do anything to her. But in an occasion like mountain racing, his room to play was countless times larger. After all, on a fast-moving track, no matter what happened, it could be blamed on the accident. Especially since he wasn't an ordinary racer, but a top racer in Xiangjiang whose level wasn't bad. He could have used a dirty move on Qin Guang without anyone noticing. I seem to have accidentally caused trouble for Qin Guang? But something wasn't right. With He Tianzhao's character, it wouldn't matter even if she spoke to him nicely. On the contrary, He Tianzhao would take the initiative to guess that she had become Qin Guang's woman. The more she explained to him, the worse it would be. From the moment he saw her buying men's underwear in the CK store, she was destined to become like this. Lu Fei couldn't help feeling a headache. She was a little unlucky. It was all that guy's fault. He insisted on buying some three-shot underwear. Otherwise she would have bought it and left. How could she have met this fly? Back at the hotel, Lu Fei angrily grabbed all the underwear out of her bag, raised her hand and threw them in front of Chen Guang. At this time, Chen Guang was sitting on the sofa, watching a Cantonese program with a painful expression. He had already been defeated by Jiang Luhua in 2 rounds. Alas, it's not even a 3-shot underwear. This underwear will definitely affect my performance. Chen Guang pursed his lips, grabbed a random package and tore it open. He pinched the fabric with his hand. Hey, I've never heard of this random brand, but the fabric is pretty good. It's almost the same as my favorite 3-shot underwear. Hehe, CK, a luxury brand founded by Calvin Klein in 1968. The one in your hand is 610, and you bought a total of 12, totaling 73.20. Do as you see fit. When will you pay me back? Chen Guang, who was drinking water. Chapter 234. After spending a lot of effort, Chen Guang still could not recover from the pain of spending more than 7,000 to buy a dozen underwear. Looking at the pile of underwear boxes thrown all over the sofa, his heart was bleeding. Can I get a refund? Yes, but I don't have the face to go. Do you want to go yourself? Lu Fei sat down next to him, too lazy to care about him. The more she thought about how she had met He Tianzhao, the angrier she got. Chen Guang did not have the face to ask Lu Fei to pay for it. Although his heart ached, he could not cheat her of money even if she did not lack it. His hands trembled as he took out his phone. Your PayPal account. I'll transfer the money to you. Lu Fei turned to look at him. Seeing his serious and pained expression, she said, Come on, your face is almost rotten from the heartache. Let's not talk about this. I'll tell you another piece of bad news. *CK. What news in the world could be worse than spending more than 7,000 on a pile of underwear? I won't accept it. Don't tell me. I don't want to hear it. After a long time, Lu Fei finally pulled him to tell her about He Tianzhao. Unexpectedly, Chen Guang just curled his lips and shrugged. What's there to worry about? Scared me. I thought it was a big deal. He drives a Dodge Viper, right? I have an impression of that car. A naturally aspirated 8.4 LV10 engine with nearly 800 horsepower. The starting speed is fast and smooth and the explosive power is strong. But that's it. He only has one chance to get close to me. He might be faster than me at the start, but it depends on the specific position. In short, as long as I overtake him once, he can forget about getting close to me again. It's that simple. On the other hand, Chen Guang was filled with disdain for Lu Fei's actions. Thinking about it carefully, the pile of underwear hurt more. Although he was not short of money, this was not the way to spend it. If I use it sparingly, I can live for several lifetimes with tens of millions. If you keep losing like this, I'm afraid it won't last until I enter the coffin. It's not Pierre Cardin's underwear. Thank you so much. Hey, you seem to know the opponent's models like the back of your hand? Lu Fei was indescribably surprised. Seeing that he seemed to be prepared and had a card up his sleeve, she felt a little more at ease. Chen Guang shrugged. Are you kidding me? It's not like I didn't do anything in the room today. I had a hard time searching for information on the internet. You can find out the horsepower of a modified naturally aspirated engine just by looking up information. A normal naturally aspirated Dodge Viper has 654 horsepower. Lu Fei was even more surprised, wondering when her good brother had become an expert in theory. Chen Guang shrugged. Don't be infatuated with me. I'm the god of racing. I can guess 80 or 90% just by looking at the speed of the other party on the big screen. At that moment, Lu Fei's phone rang. She picked it up and saw that it was from Wuxia. Sister Lu Fei, this is the information on Brother Racing God's opponent tonight. I've already sent it to Brother Racer God, so I thought I should send you one as well. Lu Fei rolled her eyes and glared at Chen Guang. She finally knew where this guy got the information from. I really don't believe you. For the entire afternoon, Chen Guang was bored to death. He couldn't continue playing games, and even if he wanted to read some physics and chemistry, he could only fantasize because he didn't bring a book. There were many Cantonese channels on the TV stations in Xiangjiang. The most annoying thing was that such a high-end 5-star hotel didn't have any special programs that adults liked to watch. He wanted to find something else to ambush the world in the cup, but because the next time was destined to be the world of punishment, he couldn't raise his fighting spirit. He could only walk around the room like a headless fly. From time to time he would climb onto the fitness equipment and fiddle around for a while. From time to time he would sit on the sofa and fight with Lu Fei for the remote control. Recently, a certain Korean star named Song Joong-ki had become unreasonably popular. At this time, Lu Fei was watching Descendants of the Sun, starring this young man who had made a comeback. Looking at Lu Fei staring at the beautiful mermaid lines of little brother Song who was working out on the TV, Qin Guang finally found something interesting. I don't need to say anything else. I also have fitness equipment here. I'll find a suitable reason to quickly take off my coat and show off my cool figure that's even cooler than little brother Song. Originally, I didn't want to be so coquettish. It's all your fault for daring to watch such an immodest TV series in front of me. I definitely can't tolerate it. Thinking of this, he first turned on the treadmill and adjusted it to high gear. After running for more than 10 minutes, he was really sweating profusely. Then Lord Guang naturally took off his clothes. Lu Fei turned her head and looked at his strange appearance. She almost laughed out loud. All right. Save some strength. There's still a competition tonight. What's there to see with your bony figure? Qin Guang was dumbfounded. Why was the script different from what he thought? He pointed at his trembling chest muscles. You call this ribs? Is the pig you raised so strong? Have you ever seen such a big rib? My figure isn't better than that person on TV? Lu Fei spat. What right do you have to be compared to brother Zhongji? Qin Guang was furious. He wrapped his coat around his body. I can't be bothered with you. Then he quickly took a shower and went back to his bedroom. He slammed the door and slammed it shut. Lying on the bed, he suddenly remembered that he hadn't opened WeChat for a long time. When he opened it, there were actually dozens of messages. About 80% of them were sent by Jiang Yage. She had added some extra content to the photos, but they were barely restrained. No matter how scary the words she added were, at least this woman didn't send any large-scale private photos that could cause an accident. Speaking of which, her Photoshop skills were really improving day by day. Look at this beautiful artistic font. TSK. Later on, I can help those writers who write on Chidian to make the cover. Other than the photos, there were some other super useless things. For example, I met a 23-year-old newcomer actor today. I'm dying of laughter. He said he started watching me act on TV when he was 3 years old. Does he think I'm stupid? At that time, I had just landed. I've long since stopped falling for this kind of old-fashioned pickup line. Also, I ate something delicious today. I wanted to buy some for you, but I don't have a chance to come to Wujing in the near future. It's pretty boring. Qin Guang rolled his eyes and only replied with one message. Good luck. He didn't even know what he was trying to express. Good luck? Was it her celebrity career? Or was it the size of the photos? Whatever. Looking at Jean Shiyue's few messages, it was much simpler. Jean Shiyue didn't have the habit of sharing her trivial life matters. She only sent a message. I've heard about your family. Do you need any help? This woman is really well informed. Could it be that she knows about my mother? Chapter 235. Qin Guang did not expect Jean Shiyue to take the initiative to send him a message to express her concern. Then why didn't she call me? Just as he was thinking about this, he immediately saw the next message. So the matter has been resolved, then I'm relieved. Anyway, good luck. So that's how it is. Her news is really more than I imagined. Qin Guang thought about it and replied, thank you. After looking at the WeChat messages from his left and right hands, Qin Guang's mind flashed again and he decided to open Weibo to take a look. Then his brand new popcorn 6P that he was so proud of almost crashed. *CK. What's going on? He took a closer look and saw thousands of message notifications. Clicking on it, there were more than 3,000 likes and more than 1,000 replies. Qin Guang was shocked. Could it be that the last time he took his left and right hands for a stroll at the amusement park had been recognized? Am I going to become an internet celebrity? He took a closer look. *CK. The replies were getting worse and worse and all of them were cursing him. Most of them were replies to Qin Guang's previous comment on Jiang Yage's Weibo. Obviously, the people who liked the post had malicious intentions. They wanted to frame him up. Hey, didn't I just complain? Is there a need to be so evil? You guys are so free all day long. Resisting the urge to delete the Weibo post, Qin Guang read the replies one by one and finally understood why his mild comment was framed. Jiang Yage's eyes are 2F** king sharp. She actually liked my post. Are you reminding your fans to focus their firepower? Even if I hide in your tens of thousands of replies and slander you a little, you can still find me. How free do you have to be? Returning to his homepage, perhaps it was a blessing in disguise. He actually gained more than 900 fans in one go. It seemed that they were all here for Jiang Ye's praise. The Weibo post that Qin Guang had posted 4 months ago, in addition to Sun Xiaoshuan's reply, was filled with replies from Jiang Ye's crazy fans. Most of them weren't pleasant to hear, and there were more than 200 of them. There might be paparazzi hiding in there, but it didn't matter. Jiang Ye had only liked one of her Weibo posts. No one could dig anything out. By Nyangzi, the B***tish even hid in the middle and replied with a meaningful hee-hee. His invisible pretense was the deadliest. Just as Qin Guang was refreshing the page, ding-dang. The total number of fans had exceeded 1,000. Qin Guang pursed his lips. Alright, even if I become an internet celebrity as a hater of Jiang Ye, it's not a bad choice. My fans are all living people. If he had tens of thousands of followers, he would be able to accept advertisements. Should I say a few more insults later? And then let Jiang Ye scold him? Thinking about it carefully, as long as he could survive, he might really become an internet celebrity. While scrolling through Weibo, he caught a glimpse of the news of the Xiangjiang car gambling competition last night. Although this kind of competition couldn't be seen in public, it still had a certain range of influence on Weibo. At least, Qin Guang took the lead last night to break the record of the top car King Diesel 4 years ago, which had been hyped up by many people in the underground racing circle. When he clicked on the text, Qin Guang broke out in a cold sweat. There was a photo of the matte GTR speeding from the front. Obviously, it was a screenshot of the race organizer from the video taken by the high-speed camera. However, these high-speed cameras couldn't have their own flash system. Otherwise, it would be a trap for the driver. Therefore, although the matte GTR in the picture looked clear, Qin Guang, who was sitting in the driver's seat, was completely dark, so he didn't have to worry about being recognized. However, Qin Guang was careful. He quickly took out the soft mask he got last night from the box next to him and put it on his face. He stood in front of the mirror and looked at himself. He was satisfied. He didn't know which master in Xiangjiang made this soft mask. The material was quite exquisite. Wearing it on his face, not only did it not feel suffocating, but it also gave him a cool feeling. The material was light and soft. If it weren't for the smiling face of the Secret Service team in the mirror, Qin Guang would almost think that he wasn't wearing a mask. Not only did it not affect his vision, but the opening of the nose and mouth were also unique. It didn't destroy the overall artistic feeling of the mask, and it also made Qin Guang speak without any difficulty. What a cool chat. Okay, from the moment I go out, I won't take off this mask. Uncle Qing came over at about 4 o'clock. When he saw Qin Guang, he said with a smile, "Little brother, did you sleep with Cash last night?" Qin Guang jumped back. Is it possible that this big boss is interested in the real money that the old man risked his life for? This is a big shot who was shot in the throat. Can I leave this hotel alive? Lu Fei patted Qin Guang's head behind him. What are you afraid of? Uncle Qing wants to help you. You can't always walk around with a big box, can you? You have to take at least 3 boxes later. Qin Guang shrugged. 7. Uncle Qing didn't want to waste time with this group of young people. He waved his hand and said, "Little brother, give me the cash and give me your bank account number. I will ask someone to transfer it to you from my private account. In this way no one can find your trace." Thank you, thank you, thank you. Qin Guang was extremely embarrassed. 1,000,000 yuan was nothing in her eyes. Originally, Qin Guang planned to go out at 6 o'clock, but Lu Fei insisted that he leave 2 hours earlier. The reason was very simple. Lu Fei's original words were as follows. You should be a little more familiar with the track. Be a little more serious. The group first went to Audiobook's modification factory. Audiobook was checking the engine compartment of the matte GTR, afraid that something would go wrong. Hearing someone behind him, he looked back and found that Qin Guang was wearing a soft mask on his face. Obviously, he had no intention of taking it off. Audiobook completely understood that this man was planning to play mysterious until the end. He was glad that he had kept his mouth shut yesterday. He hurriedly told everyone the story he had made up last night, as if he was asking for credit. Qin Guang commented, "Exaggerated, too exaggerated. If you boast too much, others won't believe you." Lu Fei stepped on Audiobook's foot again. That's right. You might as well just say that I'm a gigolo kept by Lu Fei and that I can't be seen. That way the credibility will be at least 80% higher. Get lost. Lu Fei was furious. About 15 minutes later, the matte GTR finally reappeared on the mountain track after disappearing for most of the day. Some drivers or fans who had arrived early were so excited that they hurriedly followed. In any case, this car was last night's temporary champion. They hurriedly followed behind him to learn his skills. Every little bit counts. You think you can keep up with Brother Racing God's car? Dream on. Lu Fei regained her ability to roast them. 10 minutes later, Lu Fei began to yawn violently. I say, why don't you drive faster? What's the big deal about the entire journey of 60 kilometers per hour? What's the meaning of stopping at every turn? Behind the black matte GTR, there was a long line of cars that was about 300 meters long. A large group of people were yawning madly, their eyes still drowsy. It was too boring. Could this person be toying with us? Is the driver the same as yesterday? These people were a little drunk. You're the new record holder of the mountain track. Are you humiliating us by running like this? But gradually, some smart people finally reacted. This guy is familiarizing himself with the track. *CKU. You ran 139.54 kilometers last night. Now you're telling us that you're familiarizing yourself with the track. That's too much. Chapter 236. You're not humiliating us, you're humiliating all the racers you killed last night. Qin Guang didn't think that much. There were many reasons why he could drive the magically modified Alto steadily at 400 kilometers per hour in the Racing Gods training ground. First, it was the bug in the strengthening parameters. Second, it was because he had died so many times that he knew the route like the back of his hand. He had to remember it. If he didn't, he would die in minutes. The reason why he stopped at every corner was that he had to remember the characteristics of all the corners. From the angle of the turn, to the change in the inclination of the road, to the difference in the width of the yellow line on both sides of the road, he had to memorize all of it. It seemed that no one could pose a threat to him now. God knew what would happen when he entered the battle to protect the car. So, the racing god Qin Guang got serious. Regardless of how Lu Fei ridiculed him, Qin Guang did not speak a single word from the start to the end. Every single time he stopped at a bend, he would only turn his head and squint his eyes like a scanner, taking in the entire situation at the bend. Gradually, Lu Fei stopped talking. Qin Guang was serious. Although she couldn't see his face through the mask, his eyes were so handsome. Finally, when it was 7:30, both the racers and the fans arrived one after another. There seemed to be more people than yesterday. At least, there were about 3,000 more people in the parking lot of the starting point. Apart from these ordinary fans, there was another group of people who stood out. Even though there were only a dozen people in casual clothes, both the fans and the racers couldn't help but look in that direction. No one would have thought that on the second day of the race, there would be a new king. And there were two of them. The king of Thailand, Wu Panjunyo, 21 years old. 5 years ago, at the age of 16, he had become famous in the Paris race. So far, he was the youngest king in history. He was called the Dark Knight Demon. He had mastered the strange drifting and cornering technique. He often overtook his opponents when they weren't paying attention. Back in the Paris auto racing competition, it was only when he won the final victory and was about to take away 7 luxury cars that people suddenly realized that this slender man who was as beautiful as a woman was already the king of cars of the day. The second was the king of Japan, Ryuichi Takahashi. He was the absolute overlord of the Tokyo auto racing competition 6 years ago. Nicknamed the Burning God of War, he was the world's best racer at driving a GTR. His master once drove the first-generation GTR R32 to slaughter his peers in the formal European arena. Although he was a famous master, he did not choose to become a registered official player. Instead, he threw himself into the underground racing without hesitation and eventually surpassed his master to become the recognized king of cars. The student surpassed the master. Interesting. Ryuichi Takahashi, this newcomer chose GTR just like you. Wu Panjunyo shook his unique sharp voice and said with a faint smile. Ryuichi Takahashi smiled confidently. Of course, because the GTR is the most perfect racing car in the world. If it weren't for those despicable Europeans, my master would have dominated the racing world. Really? Wu Panjunyo was no longer interested in talking to this nationalist. If Ryuichi Takahashi knew that Qin Guang drove a GTR only because it was not his own car at all. He drove whatever car Wang Qing gave him. Even if Wang Qing took out a magically modified Jetta, Qin Guang would still accept it. Thankfully, if it were not Otto, Ryuichi Takahashi would not be able to show off. Yuan, can you take me there? I've seen his video. This newcomer is really strong. I want to chat with him. Wu Panjunyo turned his head and said to his driver Yuan, who was the champion of last year's Xiangjiang auto racing competition. Yuan thought for a moment. I can only try. He doesn't seem to like contacting outsiders. The middle-aged man sitting next to the GTR is our Mr. Tang from Xiangjiang. He has a very high status. He is a big shot who is specially escorting him. Wu Pan Junyao raised his eyebrows. Interesting, even more interesting. It's not impossible to say hello, right? Let's go. Let's try. Yuan had no choice but to bring Wu Pan Junyao to Qin Guang's direction. Before the two of them got close, they were stopped by Uncle Cheng's bodyguards. However, as the champion of last year's race, Yuan was a little famous in the local area. One of the bodyguards knew Yuan and asked him politely what he was doing here. Yuan pointed to Wu Pan Junyao behind him. This is Thailand's racer king, Mr. Wu Pan Junyao. He wants to talk to the driver in this GTR. The bodyguard could not make up his mind. After thinking for a while, he asked Lu Fei for her opinion. Thailand's racer king wants to talk to you. Are you interested? Lu Fei turned to ask Qin Guang. In fact, she was very excited. The former racer king was unattainable and arrogant. Qin Guang had only finished the first round and he actually took the initiative to talk to him. The racer king was indeed the racer king. He could immediately see how good Qin Guang was and took the initiative to talk to him. Unexpectedly, Qin Guang pouted. What's there to talk about? I'm not interested. Huh? Is that so? Lu Fei was a little disappointed. She turned to look out the window, intending to say goodbye to the bodyguard. Just then, Qin Guang finally turned his head to the side and widened his eyes. *CK. A beauty? The racer king. This girl, why are you so cool? Wait a minute. See. Of course I want to see. Ah? Alright, I give up. Lu Fei's head was about to explode from his capriciousness. When she turned around and saw his shining eyes, she understood and almost laughed out loud. As a racing fan, Lu Fei had heard of Wu Pan Juanyao's deeds. Mr. Wu Pan, you really have a lot of influence. Hearing that they were allowed to go over, Yuan was delighted. Wu Pan Junyao smiled charmingly. Of course, I'm the racer king after all. What are you going to say to him? I haven't thought about it yet. I'll just give him some encouragement. The two walked straight to the GTR's right door. On the other side, Qin Guang had already rolled down the car's window. He used the night light to size up the girl outside and secretly commented. He really did not expect that there was a woman in this world who could be the racer king. She was too beautiful. Look at her small eyes and sharp oval face. It looked like it was carved out with a knife. Her figure was great too. But would her chest be flat? Forget it. Being flat had its benefits. How could one rule the world if one's chest was flat? Hello. Qin Guang took the initiative to greet him in English. Wu Pan Junyao stood by the car door and smiled. Hello. Do you have any advice? Qin Guang said with a chuckle, wiping away the saliva that almost leaked out from the corner of his mouth. Wu Pan Junyao gently flipped his hair and pressed both hands on Qin Guang's car door. He smiled even more brightly. I have high hopes for you. You must enter the battle to protect the car. Don't let me not even have a chance to appear. Chapter 237. Qin Guang reacted quickly and reached out to grab Wu Pan Juanyao's hand from above. Of course. Usually, Qin Guang wasn't such a frivolous and daring person. But today, Master Guang's decisiveness had been influenced by the outside world. Of course, he didn't think of guarding against it at all and let the sluggishness intensify. Besides, he felt that girls who liked to race cars were quite generous. As the king of cars, this Thai girl must be the most open-minded. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. He had to take advantage of her. Wu Pan Juanyao's snow-white face blushed when Qin Guang suddenly grabbed his hand. He forced a smile and said, "Then I'll wait for your good news." With that, he pulled his hand away and turned to leave. After watching the beautiful king of cars walk away, Qin Guang wound up the car window and turned back to Lu Fei. This girl is really pretty. The skin on the back of her hand is really soft. It's just that her voice is a little hoarse and sounds androgynous. I'm not spouting nonsense, but she's like you, Lu Fei, a perfect goddess. Sigh, if it weren't for the fact that I'm not interested in racing cars, it would be quite exciting to have the opportunity to form a King of Cars team with her. Lu Fei slapped Qin Guang's head. King of Cars, my ass. You should be the King of Cars. I'm a guy. What? A guy? That's right. A real man. Thailand's King of Cars, hee. What the hell? Master Guang felt nauseous. He looked down at his hands, which still smelled of perfume. I want to die. I feel terrible. I want to chop my hands off. I actually pinched this damn sissy's hand. And I even pinched him until his face turned red. Damn it. He can't have fallen for me, right? I'm starting to panic. Lu Fei, I don't want to live anymore. Lend me your thigh and let me cry. With that, Qin Guang turned and pounced on Lu Fei's thigh. Lu Fei was caught off guard. Cry all you want. Lend me your thigh all you want. Why is your right hand grabbing my chest? You shoved your left hand under my butt again. I touched something impure just now. I need to touch the goddess with full marks to resist this evil power. Otherwise I'll definitely lose today. Lu Fei, you have to help me. You're a goddess with full marks. That damn sissy just now is poisonous. Lu Fei had seen many shameless people, but she had never seen someone as shameless as this. However, in her heart, she was not against Qin Guang's shamelessness. She only turned her head away with a red face. Looking at the similarly crazy men and women outside the window, a strange feeling welled up in her heart. She was exceptionally shy, yet she was reluctant to let go of his demonic hands. Forget it, I thought about massaging his chest yesterday anyway. Let him pinch me a little, I won't lose a piece of flesh. When he's tired of pinching me, he'll let go. Don't put your hand in there. 25 minutes later. Ruffy was almost out of breath. It's almost time for the competition. You are in the first group. Get up. Time was running out, and everyone had already gotten into position. Qin Guang reluctantly let Lu Fei out of the car. When she finally closed the door, Qin Guang clenched his fist. Awesome. Yesterday's butt. Today's chest. Tomorrow's upgrade. Lu Fei was not the only one planning this. Qin Guang had planned this from the beginning too. What a shameless pair of adulterers. F***CK. Why am I number 5? This is F***King cheating. When Qin Guang was directed by the competition referee to get into position, he saw his cue number and was stunned. Also, was this Dodge Viper next to him the bastard that Ruffy mentioned yesterday? Wasn't he running 137 yesterday? He was also next to me? The higher the first round, the more he would be pushed to the last 3 rows? Turning his head, Qin Guang smiled again. Fortunately, the McLaren 675 that was eating his dust yesterday was even worse off. It was already in the 4th row. Speaking of which, was the guy driving the Viper sick? What was he trying to say by rolling down the window? It was very noisy outside. Yi Tianzhao, who was in the Viper, was angrily waving his arms and legs at him, cursing and swearing. However, Qin Guang did not roll down the window so he could not hear what the guy was saying. Forget it. He was so enthusiastic, so I can't just stand by and do nothing. Qin Guang only smiled at him and gave him the middle finger. Courtesy demanded reciprocity. F***CK. Yi Tianzhao originally wanted to provoke Qin Guang before the race and launch a psychological attack. In the end, Qin Guang did not respond at all and even gave him the middle finger. Seeing that the guy next to him was so angry that he was slapping the steering wheel, Qin Guang laughed again and turned his head to look ahead. He ignored him and let him be. Speaking of which, there was another girl in front of the starting line today. She was a girl with long black hair that suited his taste. Although her figure was not as good as the girl from yesterday, she still looked like a first-class model, especially with her long black hair that reached her waist like a waterfall. She was really beautiful. She looked noble and elegant, but unfortunately she was still a bit loose in her bones. She was too generous. No matter what others thought, the old man could not accept his own woman being taken advantage of by others. However, on second thought, the old man was that other person now. Don't worry about who will be the one to take over her in the future. Let the old man feast his eyes first. Could it be that every group had a different type of boob-slinging girl? I missed 7 yesterday. My heart hurts. That's not right. I can't show my face. I can't stand outside with a mask on. If I wear a mask, I will be surrounded at any moment. Thinking about this, my heart hurts even more. There should be a full recording of this race. When I get back, I will ask Lu Fei to help me make a full set. Don't worry about the race, just keep a small part of the highlights. That's right. Let's do this. If others knew that the racing god of this generation, who was destined to be admired by tens of thousands of people, was only thinking about that girl who had exposed her chest in front of everyone when they set off, would those racing fans cover their faces in misery and feel ashamed for him and themselves? However, Qin Guang did not have much time to let his imagination run wild. The race was about to begin. It was different from yesterday. At that time, no one thought that the driver in this mad GTR was so amazing. But today, when the 8 mechanical beasts roared together and madly rushed forward, at least half of the people on the sidelines had their eyes on Qin Guang's car. Regardless of whether the other drivers were convinced or not, they could not hide the fact that he ran at his best yesterday. Qin Guang did not care so much. His movements were smooth and natural. Because of the right-hand steering wheel, his start yesterday was not very good. Today it was much easier and more familiar. In the flow of traffic, Qin Guang, who was originally lagging behind, was the first to suddenly speed up and go straight to the Audi R8 in front of him. Thanks to the powerful performance that Wang Qing had spent tens of millions of yuan on, the violent 800 horsepower V12 quickly pulled to the limit to provide strong torque, coupled with the assistance of the ultra-lightweight carbon fiber body, and Qin Guang's instantaneous continuous gear changes after 2.5 seconds, Qin Guang suddenly increased the speed to 100 km per hour. Not only that, he did not reduce the gear but still violently hit the accelerator. He let the tachometer rush into the red zone. The number 5 matte black GTR was extremely crazy and violent from the beginning. The front of the car chased after the R8's tail. Everyone looked at this car with their mouths wide open. This lunatic. How can you speed up like this from the beginning? Your speed is indeed better than the Audi R8 in front of you, but are you not afraid of crashing into it? There are 2 cars in front of you. There is no space to overtake at all. At the same time, He Tianzhao, who was speeding up step by step in the Dodge Viper, was also shocked by the situation on his left. He thought to himself, this guy wants to get rid of me at the beginning? Dream on. Chapter 238. Number 5 GTR is speeding up. It just started and it's speeding up like crazy. It's relying on its performance to overtake the R8 and 911 in front. It's going to crash. Mr. X was indeed an experienced commentator. He had seen through Qin Guang's thoughts the moment Qin Guang started speeding up, and he spoke very quickly. But his words were still filled with disbelief. Such strong cars relying on their performance to overtake weaker cars usually only happened in the middle and late stages of a race. At the start, everyone would be squeezed together. It was obvious that they wanted to crash and forfeit the race. Before Mr. X finished speaking, the Dodge Viper on the other side of Qin Guang did the same thing. The Viper's 780 horsepower naturally aspirated engine might not be as strong and durable as the V12 turbocharged engine in the middle and late stages of acceleration, but at the starting stage of linear acceleration, it relied on its 8.4L displacement to obtain a terrifying propulsion force. The Viper is also speeding up. In the car, Qin Guang glanced at He Tianzhao's actions from the corner of his eye. He was unmoved and the corner of his mouth curled into a cold smile. So, he really wants to teach me a lesson? Going against me from the start? Then come. Qin Guang's right hand suddenly exerted force, and the steering wheel swung half a circle to the left. At the moment when he was about to hit the rear of the R8, he suddenly changed direction in the traffic flow to the left sideline. He was going to overtake from the left. Almost at the same time, the Dodge Viper changed to the right. It was also going to overtake the Porsche 911 in front from the right. The fight on the mountain road had reached its climax in less than 5 seconds from the start of the race. Were these 2 people crazy? Everyone's mind was turning over the same thought at the same time. Even the drivers, Yuan and Wu Panjunyao, had their eyelids twitching, let alone the others. Lu Fei's whole body was tense. Of course, she knew that Qin Guang's driving skills were good, but she had never seen such an intense fight that was close to risking one's life. From her point of view, Qin Guang's biggest advantage was that he could rely on his perfect control of the bends to leave others in the dust. His advantage definitely did not include this kind of situation where he would fly off the track with just a touch. The GTR and Python are about to overtake each other from both sides at the same time. Were they trying to turn the 2-lane road into a 4-lane road? The R8 and 911 were under immense pressure. They began to move closer to the center. However, there's only a little more than 2 meters of space left for the GTR and Python. Madman. Everyone today is a lunatic. Mr. X couldn't calm down at all as he roared. On the other side, Qin Guang and He Tianzhao simultaneously drove their cars into the gap between the cars in front and the edge of the road. At the same time, he switched to third gear and increased his speed crazily. Compared to these 2, the R8 and 911 that were sandwiched in the middle were in an awkward position. Not only were their routes taken away, but their speed was also completely inferior. It was almost as if they were standing still. However, in reality, both of them were moving at almost 150 km per hour. The slightest carelessness and a collision would result in the destruction of the car and the death of the passengers. To Qin Guang's left was the edge of the road. The trees by the roadside were so close that they seemed to be within reach. His eyes were extremely focused. A third of the left tire was already suspended above the drainage ditch. Finally, there was a burst of flame from his exhaust pipe, and the car's speed increased again. He overtook the car at close to 200 kilometers per hour. On the other side, the Dodge Python relied on a stronger thrust to quickly increase its speed to 220 kilometers per hour, and successfully overtook Chen Guang. In less than 10 seconds after the race started, the third and fourth, fifth and sixth places had changed positions. What a crazy guy. Ryoichi Takahashi had a charming smile on his face as he said to the short and fat Japanese man beside him, "Naoki, this GTR racer reminds me of a friend from many years ago." "Oh, Fujihara-kun. Is that so?" On the other side, Ayuan looked disdainfully at the fans who were heaving a sigh of relief. These people are making a fuss out of nothing. He's just relying on the car's power to overtake. The Amaterasu is running pretty well too. Wu Pan Junyao shook his head slightly. "Ayuan, can you calculate the width of the GTR and the space left for him by the R8? Just now the GTR had at most half of its tires suspended. Although your friend's maneuver looks equally thrilling, there's a protective fence on his right side, there's no drainage ditch." Ayuan was speechless. On the other side, Lu Fei yanked Ajie's collar. "Ajie, tell me, how's the anti-collision performance of this GTR?" Ajie's expression changed as he said in embarrassment, "In order to reduce the weight and improve the acceleration, the anti-collision performance was not specially strengthened. However, part of the car body was replaced with high-strength carbon fiber, and the overall strength was improved to a certain extent, but not much compared to the original. You know, although carbon fiber is strong, it's not as tough as steel." Lu Fei let go of his grip and shook Ajie off. She frowned as she looked at the GTR on the big screen, which had just been pushed to the back by He Tianzhao. Her eyes were filled with unspeakable worry. Chen Guang was only occasionally crazy, but He Tianzhao's running style was famous for being arrogant. Now that he had overtaken Chen Guang was in danger. "If anything happens to him, I want He Tianzhao's life. No matter what the reason is. There's no need for any unnecessary explanations." Lu Fei turned her head and said softly to Uncle Cheng beside her. Uncle Cheng nodded, indicating that he understood. Ajie, who was standing beside the two of them, listened with trepidation. On the other side, Chen Guang and He Tianzhao were fighting in the third and fourth positions. Chen Guang had tried to use the bends to overtake the GTR, but the Viper was also famous for being the king of bends. He Tianzhao's level was not bad and he had purposely taken the road, so he had managed to overtake Chen Guang until the seventh consecutive bend. Following closely behind Chen Guang and He Tianzhao was a Subaru Winged Leopard WRXST that had also broken Diesel's record the day before. Although this car was not expensive, it had great potential for modification. This was not an ordinary Winged Leopard. The modifier had put in a lot of effort, and it had long been trained to be a road beast with outstanding performance. The two people in front were fighting, but the Winged Leopard driver was not in a hurry. He just steadily followed behind them, maintaining his fifth position. It was not that he did not want to overtake, but that the two people in front were too crazy. He did not want to act rashly and get himself into trouble for no reason. Actually, the ones who were the most flustered were the Jaguar and Mercedes-Benz SLS drivers who were running at the front. Yesterday, the two of them had barely managed to maintain their top four positions, and today was the reason why they were in the front row. After witnessing the collective explosion of the top racers yesterday, the two of them did not have much hope for today's second round. In the end, they were followed by two crazy people today. One was the best racer from yesterday, and the other was also in the top three. The two in front were secretly relieved. If it was not for the Viper and GTR entangling each other, they would have been overtaken long ago. Whether it was the Benz or the vehicle's performance, they were completely outclassed. It was only a matter of time before they were overtaken. Even if they managed to take the lead on the uphill section, they would not be able to hold on for the second half of the downhill section. They were just afraid that the two of them would be as unreasonable when they overtook them as when they started off. Suddenly, the engine behind them roared again as if it was overloaded. 7 consecutive bends. In front of them was that scary Z-bend. The two crazy people behind them finally could not hold back. Chapter 239. The Forest Viper is about to make a move. Your friend is quite daring. Wu Pan Junyao said to Ayuan with a smile as he looked at the image that flashed across the huge screen. Ayuan nodded. The GTR's performance at the Z-turn yesterday was indeed amazing. However, He Tianzhao was a local racer from Xiangjiang and would come to the mountain track almost every day. The Z-turn was also his specialty. The Jaguar slowed down to 100 km per hour before entering the turn, and the SLS behind it also slowed down. He Tianzhao controlled his speed to close to 100 kilometers per hour. He overtook the SLS from the inside. Qin Guang followed closely behind. The SLS racer lost the inside line. If he did not slow down, he might hit the fence. He could only slow down again. F***ck. He cursed angrily, but it was meaningless. In the blink of an eye, the Forest Viper and GTR overtook the SLS from the inside line. There was only one Jaguar left in front of them. After rushing out of the first Z-turn, both of them hit the accelerator at the same time and rushed into the second turn. He Tianzhao's speed was controlled at around 105 kilometers per hour. It was not as fast as Qin Guang yesterday, but it was still faster than the Jaguar's speed of 100 kilometers per hour. He sped up easily and got into the Jaguar's inside line. Qin Guang's car maintained a distance of less than a decimeter from the Python. The two of them, one at the front and one at the back, were at nearly the same angle as they forcefully drifted on the inner lane and crossed the middle lane of the drifting Jaguar. First and second. Beautiful. Great job, Tenzhou. Yuan and He Tianzhao were both Xiangjiang racers. Naturally, they would cheer for their teammate. Wu Pan Junyao squinted his eyes. Yuan, you're wrong. It's not your friend who's really good. It's the GTR. What? Yuan did not understand. You know, when two cars are drifting side by side, the most difficult part is not the car in front, but the car behind. A collision will happen if you're not careful. But look at the distance between the GTR and the Forest Viper. It doesn't change at all during the drift. Such accuracy is already at the millimeter level. Even among the top 10 racers, there are less than 5 who can do this. Of course, those who can't do this are not bad. It's just that everyone has a different style. Mr. Wu Pan, can you do that? No problem. Finally, the second round of the competition became a duel between Qin Guang and He Tianzhao. Who will win? This question was asked by Mr. X on the commentary platform. However, no one laughed at his unprofessionalism. In terms of pure average speed, yesterday's GTR was 139.54, and He Tianzhao's result was above 137. Looking at the whole process, it seemed that there was a huge difference. However, in this kind of competition where people were chasing and overtaking each other, the competition was not just about absolute speed. Fighting and killing each other was the real theme, not to mention that He Tianzhao was currently in the lead. If the slightest detail was not handled properly, it could lead to the car crashing and people dying. The car racing competition wasn't just a competition of absolute speed. More importantly, it was a competition of courage and mental quality. If you can find a suitable opportunity to surpass your opponent quickly, accurately and ruthlessly, then from then on, you can fly as high as a bird in the sky. However, if you can't rush over or get stuck when trying to overtake, then you can't blame others. And He Tianzhao was famous in Xiangjiang not only for his absolute speed, but also for his ruthlessness and quick reflexes in this kind of chase and battle. Wanting to overtake his car was known to be harder than ascending to heaven. Even the helicopter in midair no longer paid attention to the people behind. The giant screen was the scene of Qin Guang driving the GTR and biting the back of the Dodge Viper. Lu Fei was nervous again. If Qin Guang was another opponent, she might not panic at all, but this He Tianzhao was a lunatic. Normally, he might be afraid of her and be relatively restrained, but Lu Fei, who also raced, knew that when the speed reached a certain limit, the burning passion of racing could ignite all the rationality of the driver. At this time, he would become incomparably dangerous. Qin Guang, what are you thinking at this time? Don't be silly. You must find an opportunity to overtake again. Lu Fei could not help but guess so. On the other side, Qin Guang felt a little bored. He yawned, squinted his eyes, swung his hand and made another perfect and smooth turn. How could such a beautiful person be a boy? It's really a pity. I'm also stupid. When I heard that bastard was some Thai car king, I should have thought of it long ago. I must keep this matter to myself. It's 2F** king shameful. Speaking of which, Lu Fei's body was really great. It was big, round and elastic, almost comparable to a volleyball. Her face was also very beautiful. No wonder the grandson in front liked her. But so what? Are you half as handsome as me? Then she would tilt her head and glance at the rearview mirror. Once she saw my handsome face, she would be fascinated by herself. What a terrifying fight. He Tianzhao is worthy of being called the half-mountain killer. His snatching position is extremely fierce. He suppressed the GTR at the back without a chance. The GTR that showed us its peak speed yesterday was completely suppressed by him. Of course, the GTR didn't give up the opportunity either. From the beginning to the end, it was biting tightly behind Python. Every minute and every second was so thrilling and exciting, as though a violent collision would happen in the next moment. The first half of the uphill segment is about to end. Let's see the average speed of both parties, 113. Such an intense competition. Both parties' speeds are shockingly fast. It's on par with the GTR's solo lead yesterday. It's about to enter an even more terrifying downhill segment. These two lunatics, it's either you die or I live. This is a battlefield. A battlefield that belongs to the racers. Mr. X's voice was still full of passion, inciting people's fear. Listening to his commentary, be it the spectating racers or the fans, they all broke into a cold sweat for the two of them. He Tianzhao slightly arched his back and stared straight ahead, then quickly drifted away. His eyes were focused on the GTR behind him, his eyes were bloodshot, flashing with madness. He kept muttering to himself, "Come on. Come on. I'm going to send you to hell. Brat, do you feel despair?" Qin Guang, who was at the back, yawned again, his left hand wiping away the tears squeezed out from his eyes. "I'm almost done playing. That D*Ned sissy hurt me quite a bit. Speaking of which, will I be able to stick my head in tomorrow? I'm looking forward to it just thinking about it. Let's take down that idiot in front, the V-shaped bend in front. Bastard, don't slow down if you have the guts." Then he suddenly sat up straight and sped up. He Tianzhao slightly cut into the inner lane, intending to slow down and enter the bend, because he knew that it was an almost 180-degree V-shaped bend in front of him. However, from the corner of his eyes, he suddenly saw the GTR behind him speeding up to shorten the distance between them. What is this guy trying to do? This is the downhill segment. You still dare to speed up? At this moment, the GTR suddenly moved to the right, trying to overtake from the outer lane. Dream on. Without thinking, He Tianzhao also pulled the steering wheel to the right. He did not intend to leave any gap for the GTR. Slow down obediently. Despair. He Tianzhao smirked and looked at the rearview mirror, only to realize that there was nothing behind him. Chapter 240. At that moment, He Tianzhao first heard a strange sound from the left side of his back, followed by a click and the car vibrating slightly. Then he heard the roar of the engine from his left side. He turned his head but could only see the right side of the GTR. In that short moment, the matte black beast had rushed in front of him. He was overtaken. What the hell happened? He Tianzhao was at a loss. The countless spectators and racers who were watching this scene through the giant screen projection were equally shocked. At that moment, the GTR made a feint, pretending to use the bend to overtake the car on the outside line. Then, when the Viper changed to the outside line, he slammed on the brakes and turned the front of the car behind the Viper. Then he sped up and changed lanes at the same time, speeding up while cutting into the inside line. The front of the GTR and the rear of the Viper were getting closer as he sped up. The moment he cut into the inside line, they collided. Sparks flew. Maybe it was an accident, or maybe it was within the GTR's driver's expectations, but the slight collision did not affect his speed at all. Then he completely took over the inside line. He used a higher speed to overtake the car on the yellow line. He Tianzhao roared, "I won't let you succeed." As he roared, he sped up and forced the front of the car onto the inside line. But it was too late. His speed was too fast and he could no longer take over the inside line. "I can't even stand on the inside line. You're at least 140 kilometers per hour. Let's see how you cross the bend. Just wait for your death." He Tianzhao tried his best to control the car and looked coldly at the GTR in front of him. What? Why is it this side? He's facing me? In front of him, Qin Guang's GTR had already turned sideways. It was almost at a right angle to the road. He wanted to cross the V-shaped bend at 140 kilometers per hour. That was the only way. That was to directly drift across with inertia, and when drifting halfway, forcibly use the momentum to provide a forward thrust to straighten the path. This was inertial drift. It's actually inertial drift. The feint he made earlier wasn't just to deceive me, it was also to adjust the car's position before the inertial drift. He Tianzhao felt a chill run down his spine. He had been completely fooled. Up ahead, Qin Guang's rear end first swung past the sharp end of the V-shaped curve. Then, the front of the car cut across the curve, and the car continued to drift sideways towards the fence next to the curve. But just as the car was about to hit the fence, the abundant power finally pulled the car back. There was only a series of dazzling sparks on the railing before he completely straightened the front of the car and accelerated. Charge. With an indomitable aura. Qin Guang snatched first place for the first time. No. He Tianzhao roared crazily. He would never accept such a clean defeat. Lu Fei. I said that I would teach this person a lesson. I'm going to knock him off the cliff. He Tianzhao gritted his teeth and sped up again. This time he only wanted to charge at the GTR's tail. He wanted to hit the GTR's tail when it made a turn and make the GTR completely lose control. But how was that possible? Qin Guang had had enough. He was a little unhappy that he had been overtaken in the first half of the race. Now that he had finally familiarized himself with the track, he couldn't possibly be worse than yesterday, right? I'll just be a little more serious? I'll run an average speed of 145 km per hour today. The next curve was supposed to be an ordinary C-shaped curve, but Qin Guang suddenly used the amazing divine drift that he had seen yesterday. It was as accurate as a machine and as stable as Mount Tai. It was just right and flawless. The car was completely stuck to the side of the curve, and the speed was pushed to the limit. He forcefully made the turn at a terrifying speed of 150 km per hour again. The weeds growing under the guardrail were crushed, but the distance between the car and the guardrail was precisely controlled at 3 mm, without the slightest deviation. He Tianzhao only wanted to crash into it, but he realized in despair that the GTR was getting further and further away from him. The divine drift at the Z-shaped curve yesterday wasn't a coincidence. This was the scene that gave the audience in front of the giant screen the most impact. Then he made another 2 consecutive hairpin turns. Before the audience could recover from the shock of the C-shaped curve, he continued to drift to the side without slowing down. They were devastated. There was actually someone in the world who could drive a car to such an extent? To be able to control this crazy sprinting machine as precisely as a human's fingers? Me? No. I give up. This is my home track. He Tianzhao went completely crazy. He had never experienced such a desperate race. The GTR was like a black devil, quickly devouring him. His dignity as a racer, his pride as a man, was being crushed bit by this person. The taillights of the GTR seemed to be laughing at his eyes coldly. He was so indignant and resentful. This level of drifting. I can do it too. Different from usual, He Tianzhao also pulled the speed to 150 km per hour when he entered the curve. He was going all out. He believed that he could do what the GTR could do and he had to do it. Then the front of his car slammed into the guardrail. The car suddenly lost its balance and swung violently, spinning several times in the middle of the road. The rear of the car slammed into the side of the mountain and finally stopped. He Tianzhao tilted his neck, which was almost broken, and stared at the GTR in front of him, which was continuously swerving through an S-curve on the downhill road. He was in despair. He unbuckled his seatbelt, opened the car door with great difficulty and flipped out of the car. He fell head first into the gutter and looked up at the broken front axle. His heart was filled with sadness. He could only withdraw from the race. When Qin Guang really finished the whole race at an average speed of 145 km per hour, he disappeared into the darkness again under the protection of the organizing committee's security personnel. More than 50,000 people on the huge mid-mountain racetrack were silent, staring at the data displayed on the giant screen with their mouths agape, unable to speak for a long time. Total time: 7 minutes 25 seconds 88 seconds. Average speed: 145. 33 seconds. What was going on with this world? Was the mid-mountain racetrack secretly widened? Speaking of which, his time in the first half of the uphill road was the same as yesterday, and he was still entangled with Python. Did that mean that he only sped up in the second half of the race and then he broke the record? The news of the GTR familiarizing itself with the track this afternoon, along with the power of another new record, gradually spread among the crowd. This group of people was even more confused. In other words, yesterday was that person's first time running the mid-mountain racetrack? Today, after familiarizing himself with the track, he exerted himself in the second half of the race, and ran an average speed of 145. 33? What kind of joyful racing was that? Was he driving a GTR or an F1? Lu Fei smiled brightly, especially when she saw He Tianzhao's miserable state. She felt even more comfortable. Previously, she was still regretting that the last 4 places in the same group as Qin Guang did not have a valuable car. Now He Tianzhao's Dodge Viper, which cost a lot of money to modify and was worth a lot, had withdrawn from the race. Needless to say, Jenny Turtle, it's you. This car, for example, was a new car worth about 5 million yuan, and He Tianzhao had invested at least 4 million yuan in modification costs, so the total value was more than 9 million yuan. Thank you so much for giving me such a big gift in the second round. Just as he had expected, Qin Guang's call came shortly after and asked, He Tianzhao's car then. No matter how much it costs. Even if it's a loss, the old man will admit it. Lu Fei grinned. It won't be a loss. That car is worth about 9 million yuan. You should be happy. He's really the boy of fortune. If he hadn't asked for it, I might not have been able to get his car. Chen Guang's lips split into a wide grin. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.